Hello, welcome to the Crackpot Podcast.
A beautiful day to start up a revolution. Molotov cocktails, martini shotgun shells, wild, 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 wild one. God forbid the cops get called. I say the more the merrier inside this free. See it all. I got front row tickets to the greatest show of all.
This is our first Crackpot Podcast in about 6 months.
Yes, well, it's nice to see you again, young lady. So I'm headed west. I'm out in Pittsburgh with Punky and Rick, and there was a lot of flooding in the east over the past week, and they got their basement flooded out.
From Isaiah.
Right, so Mr. Gray and I have been helping them do that, and it's been nice to see people. And Mr. Red came out to train with myself and Rick's guard, and we had lunch together, and he brought his notebook for all the questions his supervising officer asked him to ask me in person. And I think I asked him all to his satisfaction. I was pretty cool. Always looking to make deep state friends. Hobo, you just never know. The goodwill of such people would come in handy. And it was very nice. Rick was coming back with. He said, this is like meeting two celebrities because I listened to the podcast, and Punky brought us dinner out. We didn't even ask her. And then she brought us dinner out, made us seated. And then Rick comes back from getting a rental truck for picking up the wood stove. And he's on the porch. He's like, people were such pussies. I sideswiped some car out front, and the busybodies across the street are yelling at me, telling me that the man's wearing a red shirt and I need to find him and not to do anything shady, like try to remove the scratches myself. He's like, I wouldn't do something like that, but, I didn't do a lot of damage, and people were just such pussies. And then he said it's a black such and such type of vehicle. And they said the guy's wearing a red shirt, and he looks at the fellow that I was coaching there, and he's wearing a red shirt, and the guy says, yeah, that's my black such and such vehicle. And Rick put his head on my shoulder. He's like, dude, I'm so sorry. This is your friend. And I just sideswiped his new car, So, he exchanged information so the guy can get it taken care of through Rick's insurance company. And Mr. Red, so named for his shirt, not for the agency he represents. He was in good spirits. I guess the supervising officer is going to take care of maybe they'll present the bill to me while I'm being interrogated before the floodlights at some point in the future. I don't know. He was quite understanding about it. It was a company car, I guess. So he didn't seem too upset. And he did say to please tell Miss Lockhart thank you for the nice work she's doing on the podcast and the books. And he had me autograph numerous books that he brought with him, and I guess they were just trying to get my updated fingerprints in case they get my fingerprints altered. I don't know. So anyhow, Mr. Red, so very nice fellow.
All right. Well, we joke about this, but it's an election year, and state is not let up in its desire to control the discourse. But you're open about things. You're not open about exactly where you're staying to protect people's privacy and stuff, but it's not like you're hiding. And I don't know, I think people are just a little bit oversensitive about these kind of things. I'm thinking about the fact that you were stood up by a group of men who were supposed to be training.
That's something that's happened to me a lot in my life. I'd rather not get into that, but it's a normal thing, when you get involved, when people say, hey, I'd like, like to get together for boxing or whatever. The chances that they show up is, at best 50%, so it's something I'm kind of used to. I didn't take it as an insult. So, and, it worked out well because I ended up staying with a really wonderful family of breeders, Christian breeders, the patriarch's from another country and was actually a refugee, and gave me a brand new Finnish military rucksack. He wouldn't let me do the dishes. He insisted on carrying my backpack for me, and he hefted it. It was an overloaded tactical pack. And he said, oh no, this won't do. I've got something better for you. He even gave me like 2 medical kits and, like a battle dressing in case I get like shot in the lung or something. I mean, yeah, it was really great. Yeah, so I was really flattered, and I'm kind of the opinion that, and he shares it, that God brought us together. So like, getting stood up for training, and I ended up spending 2 days with this fantastic guy and his family. That's probably a better outcome than just me doing knucklehead digressions for a couple hours, for the umpteenth time. So, I was really blessed, and I will one day, I find myself in that synonymous state of the disunion again. We made tentative plans for me to help him build a gym because he's got more kids on the way, and he's going to have to move his gym to an outbuilding. So, we went over like preliminary specs for that. And,
Well, I'm happy, very happy to hear that. Yeah,
that's a fantastic time. And I got to play, I was actually fed and watered by some basketball Americans, and I even played basketball with some of the young basketball Americans, I think men who belonged to the local impy. And one of the guys' name was Alston. He was a rugby player and a tight end on a college football team. And I had a hard time keeping up with him, but he said I shot good. And the other guy actually, he didn't do so good with me because he was a midget like me, So apparently it's not a race-based sport. I feel the same way. And so I played my second and third basketball games in my entire life, and I was afraid I was having a heart attack like a month ago once, so I got in touch with Dr. Dredd. He's like, nah, those are intercostal tears and carpal tunnel. And I didn't end up getting an EKG, but running around chasing that ball in the asphalt in 102 degree heat and 99% humidity at like noon, that was a pretty good EKG. My heart didn't explode, so I feel like I'm good for like at least another year. But the one well-heeled basketball American that saw me standing there alone with these 2 backpacks, organizing my clothes and stuff in this not very nice municipal park, he came over to me and gave me some food and drink and, wished me the best, and I thanked him. He seemed to feel pretty compassionate about my homeless state of being. So that was nice. So it was like good things happened all along. It was a very worthwhile trip, and the most fun part was I had Mescaline Franklin did an emergency evac of my old ass and got me out of this place where I don't have an ID that corresponds with it, and it's an area where they're really funny about people from out of state being there because of the Dread Minus. On our way back into the People's Republic of Maryland, we ended up in this ghetto McDonald's parking lot, and we were right next to a Peruvian chicken joint that somebody torched. They burned it down. It seems to have been a casualty in the non-rioting, that's not happening in that town. And,
peaceful demonstrations.
Right. Because it's a college town. And, there was a young man of divine hue had a knee injury. He had a bad knee injury and he was trying to walk in a brace, and he looked like he was homeless like me. He had a backpack that was a little bit hard for him to handle. He's asking other people of his godly ethnicity for a ride down to the train station. And they're telling him flatly no. And this guy is not a dangerous dude. Okay. And finally, he looks at, I looked really raggedy. Okay. My cargo shorts like 5 times too big, and I had a sleeveless shirt on. I'm standing there with this muscular young tattooed pale-faced savage who's visibly angry because the McDonald's won't let him use the bathroom because of the dread minus is now an excuse not to clean your bathrooms and to keep them locked up so that the public can't use them. And this guy looks at us. Normally, this type of individual would know better than to ask people of his own divine ethnicity for help, and he would come right to us. Okay, because that's normally how things work. If you're a ghetto dude in a ghetto neighborhood and I show up, you ask me for help because I'm very unlikely to predate upon you. And I will hopefully be equipped with my ancestral guilt. And then this will, this will further, increase our temporary cohesion. He looked at us longingly like, wow. And I'm drinking out of this military canteen, standing over this like military rucksack. I mean, we look like preppers. We look like guys that are headed out to the last redoubt to start setting up our Claymore mines and our fields of inflated fire. It doesn't look real good. And he looks at us, and it is just like jaw drops. And he actually had to hold himself back physically from walking towards us because he really wanted to go to us for help. It was like 100 degrees out, and this guy was in bad shape, and his head swung low on his neck, and he turned around in a dejected state as the older person of his own group snarled something at him to get away from his car. And then he started hobbling down towards the train station. And then my companion, did not even notice this, because his radar only works for people that are dangerous. My radar works for everybody. And I told him about it, and he just snarled. He's like, that time's over. Not today, buddy. It's like every man for himself. We're in the end time. So it was a good time. Yeah, nice adventures. And then we got to spar in Maryland with some guys I've been coaching for a while. And Brett, the young man I coached for like 10 years, came out and took it really easy on me and still totally thumped me. So that felt really good. I'm really proud of his progress. Well, next year we'll get some videos of him and I actually fighting, so I have a 0% chance of prevailing in those encounters, but I want to get some, he's in his prime now, this kid was beating my ass when he was 16 and weighed 110 pounds. He started out training when he was 11 and he weighed 70 pounds. And now he's 5'11", 195. Real stud, eats like 2 pounds of bison every day. And, I'm just trying to get in good enough shape so, I can last for 30 to 90 seconds for, the requisite ass whoopings, and we could develop a highlight reel for him because I'm about the only guy that can move at his level. I can't fight him. Because, I just can't take the punishment and I can't hit hard enough, but I can still move around enough to like actually test his skill. So we'll do different, scenarios where, he's rubbing me out. We'll do the Bacon's Rebellion scenario, the King Philip's War scenario. We'll do Custer's Last Stand. We'll do Wounded Knee. We'll do all different versions of like rubbing out the paleface savage. So hopefully this time next year you'll have some good video of the Crackpot getting retired. So it's been Yeah, it's been a good summer.
It's been a good summer. It's actually been a spring and a summer. The last time we talked was in February, and it was just sort of getting the pandemic was just getting on our radars. So we talked a tiny bit about it. And then there was in March, of course, the whole thing crashed down. And there was the grocery apocalypse, and people were just begging to hear from you. So you wrote a few pieces about it at that time. But the grocery stores, I think, have really recovered. There was a lot of talk about supply chains and stuff. And when this whole thing started, I said, the thing is that we're all hoping for the end of globalism. But I see this as something that globalism will surmount and then be strengthened by it because, it survived another test. So
Yeah, it's a good system test. The grocery thing was such a joke. Okay, I would have made so much money if I was still managing a grocery store, having my produce guys shrink rack industrial toilet paper rolls and selling them for inflated prices. Come on, I mean, it would have been a fest. I know one manager has been making out like a bandit. His name's Mike, and he doesn't abide by the limits that the company put on. Like, he'll sell you as many cans of tuna fish or rolls of toilet paper as you want. You want to back a truck up to his dock, he'll fill it up. He doesn't care. He's making money. And that's why, all these just-in-time cultists, these people are nothing makes any sense if it's about maximum profit and, I mean, come on. You've got some of the last people in this country that are actually willing to work for a living with their hands, work in supermarkets. They might be stupid, okay, but they're not totally retarded, okay? And in each one of these stores, there's about one guy that's almost got a triple-digit IQ, that's got a lot of experience dealing with inventory control, all right? And now all of a sudden, his people are getting paid better because your volume is doubled. That solves a lot of problems. When you're an idiot, getting your volume doubled permits you to soldier on successfully as a knucklehead. It basically, the supermarket business with this thing has become 1950s America, where you could work stupidly as long as you work hard and still do well. Okay, so all these trucking companies, distributorships, all these CEOs and corporate officers and district managers, all these specialists that if their company goes under, they don't get their money. You think all these 100,000 people across this country that have been on the chopping block, the global economy had slated them for extinction, they got a new breath of life. You think they're going to just close up shop and say, oh yeah, I'm going to starve with everybody else? No, I mean, these people actually, people wanted to spit on me for working in the supermarket for 30 years. Cause I was lowest of the low. It was like all the rednecks that wanted to beat my ass for being, a feral paleface walking on the side of the road like a Negro. Okay. They all wanted to beat me up just because I was acting like a Negro. I didn't have a car. All those same people despised me for working in a supermarket. Well, now the supermarket guy is somebody. He gets to get an extra $4 an hour. He's employed. He's getting overtime. And you know what? You just adjust. I mean, come on. You're just moving shit around. How hard is it to unload a truck? I mean, we've unloaded trucks when it was so hot on the parking lot in Baltimore that you couldn't park it in front of the dock because the asphalt was melting and it sunk down below the trailer, sunk down below the dock. You just climbed the trailer and threw the shit up to your coworkers. You could do it without a tow motor. Okay. I mean, how did they used to unload sailing ships 200 years ago? You think they had tow motors then? So I just the whole thing was a joke. So I didn't feel too bad about, being out of the loop for that, But so anyhow, I was sorry for that psychotic digression, but, I was hoping a lot more sissies were going to starve, somehow to some level of confidence, but they just got fatter.
People just get fatter.
The guys I played basketball with were young college athletes, and they had as much extra fat around their waist as I did. And they were out there finally allowed to get outside and exercise. So So this is all good because now, as a broken down old piece of junk, I have ascended the masculine hierarchy of kinetic disagreement to another level, because now even most of the dudes that are training or have traditionally trained to impose their will on other men with their hands, they're not doing it anymore. I know of 9 schools that closed down that I used to be associated with, and they won't be opening back up, and other schools that have become BLM schools, and there's just nobody's getting training out there. So that's good. That's good. I train by myself most of the time anyhow. So, now I'm like maybe back up in the top 1% of American men when it comes to combat ability. I mean, come on. Yeah. 57-year-old twerp
Yeah.
with 2 hernias and a bad back and torn rotator cuffs. I'm now back in the running. If we had like an annual combat tournament, I could actually enter it. I'd have some chance of like getting into the second round. So yeah, I feel great. I'm like a pig in shit right now. So,
well, the grocery stuff we wrote about, I wrote some stuff about it too, actually. It's in Apocalisp, which we published back in April.
that title was courtesy of a young transgender person that worked at Red Castle Games in Portland, who he was very nice to me, and he tried to say apocalypse, and it actually came out Apocalisp, the way he said it. And, I was like, I like having other people accidentally title my work. So thanks for helping out with that.
Yeah, well, so much has happened. So, Apocalisp was like really just the early stage of it, and we haven't talked about it, or I haven't written much since then. But I mean, so many things have fallen apart. Things that we have talked about, like, well, Portland, that you left, so you were in Portland for most of Apocalisp. Portland now has like well over 60 nights in a row where the people of the town gather around. I think they concentrate on the federal courthouse, and every night just engage in this, mostly, quote unquote, mostly peaceful demonstrations, but they're lighting stuff on fire and throwing stuff at cops and just generally behaving like savages. So
Good. I can't wait to get back there. I'm going to be getting off the train in Portland before elections. Okay, so that'll be fun. They're very nice to homeless guys out there.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried. And the pigs, they got something better to do than me now.
Well, maybe,
right?
I don't know. I mean, they don't. I guess they do like line up every night near to the protesters, and they use loudspeakers and stuff.
Yeah, they're busy defending themselves now, so that's great. I'm not worried about any of these faggots in Portland. I had a couple people in my last month there that actually threatened me. One of them actually threatened me verbally. The other guy actually checked me as a mark. I explained this to a couple of like dissident right guys, and they couldn't understand how I could tell that this guy was threatening me. This guy was trying to figure out if he could attack me. Okay. I've written 30 books on like how you can determine this. It's second nature for me. But this guy was out there looking for marks, and he stopped and he looked at me. He was bigger than me. He was younger than me. He was armed. How can I tell I was armed? Okay. Go read Waking Up in Indian Country. Thriving in Bad Places. Okay. I can waste your time here. And in Baltimore, I would have either gone down an alley and tried to lure him into an evisceration, okay, or I would have pretended that I didn't notice him and try to see if he followed me or not, and then work on luring him into a place where there wouldn't be any camera angle, so I could, take care of things and talk to him about Epictetus and Aristotle and Socrates and try to help him put the sausage casings back into the chitling vat. But out in Portland, and this guy was a Bantu warrior too, okay? So, but even those guys out in Portland, they don't even know how to be predators. So I stopped and I fucked him. Okay. And I did that to a cop in Baltimore County like 6 weeks ago. I mean, I just since I lost weight, I've gone back to just being a creep. And like, I'm not aggressive verbally or anything like that, but, with this type of thing, if you don't know what I fucking is, okay. I don't know. Uh, go up to a police line and just start like doing like boxing stare downs, and then maybe you'll understand what it is. But, I stopped and I just looked at this guy and I couldn't help but start to grin because I just had him. I mean, this guy didn't have a chance. I mean, yeah, he was a heavyweight and everything, but he was just like, I'm going to see if there's some like soft ghosts out here that I could jack up. And he had already gotten to the point where he was checking me off his list. And then I stopped and basically teased him and sneered at him. And he ducked into the plaid pantry to get away from my devilish gaze. I think he was afraid I was going to turn him into a pillar of Himalayan pink salt. Okay. Because in Portland, you don't get turned into a regular pillar of iodized salt. It's Himalayan pink salt you get turned into. So, and then there was this little blonde guy. I was going into the garage that I lived in and I hear something behind me and I turn around and then I look and, it said something. And then I looked at it. It looked like a cute little girl. I was like, shit, I haven't had any companionship in like 3.5 months. I think I need to go out there and check this out, so I go out there and I walk up to the street. This is 2:30 in the morning, I think. A piece of metal conduit in my back pocket. I was starting to always go somewhere with a weapon at this point, because people are trying to check you as a mark. And, it was saying, what are you looking at? In a very threatening way, in a not very masculine voice. And then I realized it wasn't a cute little chick. It was a cute little dude. And and it was even smaller than me. I mean, your eyes, I mean, that brings out the worst in me right there. Okay. Yeah. So I stand right there and he says, what are you looking at? And I unbuttoned my duster and I reached around and I put the pipe in my hand, but I didn't pull the pipe out of the pocket. And I said, I live here. If you have a problem with that, we can have that discussion. And he became visibly panicked. And then he said something like, this is America. You can live wherever you want. And then he said something like, God bless Trump. And he ran away from me. I was like, what?
That's so weird.
What just happened to me? I mean, yeah, so anyhow, I started to end up having some like interesting times. And in Portland during my last, month there, we were getting up to 20 police responses a night in a pretty nice area of Portland, not the best area of Portland, not a bad. I mean, it's a nicer place than the nicest place in Maryland. Okay, that's how nice that part of Portland was. And I would hear like every 3 days, I would hear a police response siren. I was hearing up to 20 a night. So
T-Rex reports that there were 99 shootings in Portland last month.
God bless those sissies. They're starting to man up. Finally, maybe this is going to start to become a real place. And I'm really looking forward to get back there. This is going to be a chance, like maybe reboot Harm City. Okay.
Harm City West.
I'm really looking forward to it.
It's wild. There's things that have happened. So, we went from the whole virus thing smoothly transitioned into a national conflagration over questionable martyrdom event. The video's out now. The video, all the like body cam video or whatever.
Yeah. Somebody showed that to me once.
Does not look good. But anyway, we get to burn the whole country down over this. It's just 2020.
They bring that video out now to try to get resistance from the cowering conservatives that are hiding in their different places. They're trying to get them. I mean, this is just like trying to get, different groups of attack dogs against each other. This stuff doesn't work for that resistance.
The thing is,
I mean,
the conservative side, though, and this is a point I made before and I made on Twitter, it's like we've had, since Obama was elected, we have had record gun sales after record gun sales. Like, you know, Obama's going to come take away your guns, whatever, and everybody just goes out and buys everything that's on hand. And that's just, you know, supercharged over the last couple months. And in fact, they said like record numbers of Black Americans are buying legal guns in the last month or two or whatever. But there were two incidents that I wanted to share with you. Have you seen these yet? Because these are both now kind of old. There was a couple in Detroit who were in a parking lot getting harassed by like a BT3, I don't remember Tommy Sotomayor's nomenclature, but like a big lady and her big daughter were shouting at these people, and at some point the white woman pulled out her gun so that she and her husband could drive away. That was all they were trying to do. She pulled out her gun, instructed the people to back away, and then jumped back in the car and they drove away. They have been charged with crimes. And the other case was in St. Louis.
Well, I would charge them with the crime of cowardice. Okay,
cowardice.
So, you know, so.
Did you see that video? Have you seen it?
No, I didn't see it. Lock them up and throw away the key.
Do you want to see it?
Sure, I'll watch it.
Let me see if I can find it. It's 2 videos, so let me see if I can share my screen with you. Okay, so this woman you can't clearly tell, but she's actually pregnant.
Wants to violate a 15-year-old.
No, I'm asking a question. She's a child.
She bumped into me when
So if she did something wrong, she needs to apologize. If she did
This ignorant woman bumped into a 15-year-old.
Correct?
And you're on camera.
Okay.
You're feeling threatened.
Okay, well, go in.
No, Mom.
I got this.
You're blocking me from getting
No,
my
girl,
No, we weren't.
No,
No, we weren't. You're ignorant.
Go ahead, call them. No, we will, but you're not going to sit there and violate a 15-year-old.
She's ignorant.
Do it, bitch. Do it. Go ahead. Do it. I want you to do something.
She's very ignorant.
Dumbass bitch. Yeah, I said it. You said it. Put your right ass.
Yeah, that one used to shop at my grocery store.
Do something.
Please.
Who the fuck do you think you guys are?
Who do you
Your wife think you are?
You calling her name? She did nothing to you.
Yeah,
I
didn't.
No, you didn't. You're very racist and ignorant.
You're racist because you're calling
No,
her
you
name.
bumped it. She bumped into me.
You cannot just walk around calling white people racist. This is not that type of world. White people are racist.
Why would you bump her?
No one's
Why
racist.
would you bump her?
I
Why
care
did you
about
say
you.
sorry?
I care
Why
about
did you say sorry?
And I'm sorry if you
Why
had
did you
an
say
incident
sorry?
that made
If you
someone
bumped
make
into
you
her,
feel
why
like
did you
that.
say sorry?
No one is racist.
If you didn't,
I'm sorry
if
if you had something like that happen.
Ignorant.
You didn't
Couldn't an
hear.
IED go off right now? Could an IED go off right now?
You
Police
didn't
all
hear,
43?
but the woman. Oh, so see what? Did you see that? The mom like jumped behind the car. So you, I don't know if you heard, but the woman, the mother, threatened the man. I'm gonna beat your white ass. Is what she said. So.
Get the fuck away from me!
Get out of face!
Get on my fucking right now. Get away.
Hey.
Get the fuck away. Get away. Get the fuck away. Get the fuck away. Oh. Get away. Call the cops right now. Call them.
Call the cops.
Get the fuck away.
Call the cops.
Get away. She got the gun on me. Call them now. In the car. Call them. I'm telling. Get the
Call the cops.
Get the license plate. Get the license plate now. Cause you were never about to hit me with the damn car. Don't you fucking know. You about to hit me with the car? Oh, you put the guns on me.
Yeah.
Call Richard back up in the police. Call Richard back up here now. I got it. Don't you fucking jump behind
It has the same accent as people in Baltimore.
Mom,
It's funny.
stop moving. Mom.
Get the fuck back. Back the fuck up.
So that's all right. That's enough. We could hopefully all 4 of these people will be eliminated from their respective gene pools. Okay, by by some otherworldly event, like a comet that only hits them.
No, I feel really bad. I feel bad for that lady because I can, she's really scared and she's pregnant. I feel for her, but she and her husband was immediately publicly fired from his job. They tweeted it, and then they were both arrested and charged with a crime.
There is no excuse for ignorance in the court of crackpot opinion. Okay? And these people have no idea of the mores and the rules of etiquette in the possession of their master class. If they have any brain in the world, they should know that the people that they ran into on the parking lot have been elevated above them in the social and moral structure. And, they exist in some kind of utopian fantasy reality. And all they had to do was never say anything, get in their car, quietly go. Okay, so I've seen this hundreds of times. And stuff like this happens in Baltimore area supermarkets all the time, like every day. And it's the verbal escalation thing. All you have to do is neither one of these people ever open their mouth. The man takes control instead of the woman. He acted like her butler. I dealt with actual gangsters in this way who were trying to mug little Asian kids that had $30,000 backpacks full of Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I never said a word. Okay? It's very simple, but, when you run away from the people that you're afraid of and you go and you hide, and you never gain any idea of what they're like, and then they're sent after you, and then the government says they're better than you. Okay, so you're living in a utopian mindset in a dystopian setting. So a lot of this stuff is going to have to happen, and I don't feel bad for anybody here. It's not tragic. It is a necessary evolution in the awakening of the dispossessed. Silence. Okay, when we're already operating under a system control axiom of inferring the N-word. Okay, I mean that's just right there. If you do that by not kneeling and kissing a sneaker, okay, or begging forgiveness, about what some other pale-face's rich ancestor did a couple hundred years ago to some other person's ancestors. If you're not willing to take a knee and kiss a sneaker and beg, then you better shut up. And, unless you're ready to just spend the rest of your life in prison or get put 6 feet under. And that was my life. My whole time in Baltimore, the whole time I lived in Baltimore, I knew that the cops were on the side of the people of sacred hue and that I was the bad guy. I was the guilty ghost. I was the evil person just by drawing the breath of air, just by being a loser and not making enough money to get out of a dark neighborhood. The cops see me as the enemy because I'm in the wrong neighborhood, and the people that live in the neighborhood see me as the enemy because I'm in the wrong neighborhood. And you know what? It was a neighborhood that I was born into and my cousins were born into. And then it became not my neighborhood. It was given to somebody else. The government put these people over top of me and said, these are your masters. Okay. If you fight them, you're going to have a bad end. So speaking of which, a similar incident to this happened during the Baltimore riots. Okay. RJ, who was a friend of mine, not a close friend. He admired me a lot and I respected him a lot, but, he was jealous of my relationship with his younger brother, who was a guy I coached. And I couldn't properly serve his younger brother, Adam, to the best of my ability if I let RJ monopolize on my time. So I disrespectfully had conversations with RJ. And then, so he wouldn't feel like I was disrespecting him in his parents' house. And he was the protector of his parents and his neighbors. And he was my protector. During the 2015 riots, he stopped what happened was groups of men, 5 at a time, Bantu warriors, one with a gas can, one with a grow lighter, one with a bat, one with a smartphone. the other unarmed, fanned out, and they locked down neighborhoods so that there would be no eyes on the street, nobody on the street. They were conducting their own curfew. And they were not harassed by the police, and the military contractors, like palefaces like me, were harassed on the street. Okay, so we had the curfew being imposed by the Bantu warriors and the curfew being imposed by the military contractors, directed at me and mine. Okay, trash had to stay inside. Darksome gods got to roam the streets. Men in blue and insigniated black BDUs that worked for the academy and Triple Canopy, they got to cruise the streets, not me. I was locked inside. Okay. The reason why the 5-man teams came around was to get everybody inside. So then the 3-man teams, it was usually 2 dudes and a chick with a crowbar, could hit all the pharmacies and liquor stores and everything. Well, they were coming up Caucasian Avenue where I lived. RJ lived at the base of it. This was after his younger brother had already moved to another state. And he went out there with his Sig Sauer 9mm and said, "You're not passing. You're not coming past. The next way over to Harford Road is a mile up the road. You guys got to take a detour. You're not coming up my street." And they respected that. All right. His next door neighbor was a pale-faced woman who was breeding with a Bantu warrior. The Bantu warrior started stabbing her to death, causing sucking chest wounds on her front lawn, was stabbing her to death. RJ came outside, disarmed the Bantu warrior, okay, disarmed him without hurting him, respected his godhood and his deification, applied pressure to the sucking chest wound, stabilized the woman. Then, while his mother was calling the police, went over to the Bantu warrior and hugged him and counseled him and let him cry on his shoulder and reminded him not to fight the cops when the cops showed up, because RJ didn't want to see anything happen to this guy. He knew that he just flipped out because this girl who was a savage and treated him like a subhuman and called him names all the time, he realized that he just finally lost control. He had been called bad names in front of his children one too many times, and he already felt bad about what he did. Okay, so this is what kind of guy RJ was. Okay, he protects his block. That made him the enemy of the Baltimore City Police Department, and they beat him to death in 2017. It was either late 2017 or early 2018. Would not even let his mother view the body. Just like Ricky Mason's 2 brothers, just like Henry out in Harford County, all pale-faced white trash like me. Okay, they were beaten to death by Maryland police force people, and nobody cared. No newspaper story. Now, so we all knew then. We knew that the price was on our head. We were coyotes in Wyoming. We knew that back then. So now all these people that thought I was a piece of shit for living in Baltimore City, that thought I was a scumbag and would throw their Burger King drinks at me for jogging or walking on the side of the road when they drove by in their SUV or their pickup truck. Okay, because I was walking like I was somebody of the wrong color to be walking. All those people, now they got it coming. Now they get to live my life, and I'm not going to take joy in it. But they're going to have to learn or not learn. If they don't learn, bad stuff's going to happen to them. And a lot of the bad stuff that's going to happen to them is going to be done by the government and their agents. Because these 2 Bantu priestesses here, the queen and the princess, their purpose is to get this fat wimp, okay, to fail to act like a man, okay? You don't verbalize with women, okay, when they're misbehaving, okay? You act, okay? So he fails to act like a man. He fails to protect his woman. He fails to tell her, "Bitch, shut up." He should have got right between her and the other girls and grabbed her, bumped her head on the frame of that car, shoved her in and said, "Bitch, shut up," okay? As soon as he'd have done that, these 2 queens would have shut up because they would know what's up. They know what kind of man does that. Then he would have gotten his car, and they would have still been standing there going, "Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my, he white? And he a real man? Oh my God. That ain't in the playbook." Okay. Gone. End of sentence. But he doesn't know how to act like a real man. He's ruled by his feral woman, and their child, when it's born, is going to end up being either a slave girl to one of the sons of these girls, or is going to end up being a sissy. These people, they're out there just letting people of the godly hue, every one of these idiots that acts like this, they're just giving some idiot, like the guy in Portland that was trying to decide whether to mug me, they're reinforcing the idea that all pale people are wimps, and they all kneel, and they all kiss boots, and they all call the cops. They all try to talk their way out of the situation. They all try to reason that instead of just act. Okay, so every time these people that look like me act like this, they put me in danger. Okay. There was a time when a guy that looked like me could walk through a neighborhood that was 4 miles deep that didn't have a pale face in it, and nobody would give them a hard time. There was a time. My Uncle Robert used to do it. There was a time. Okay. Now, all of these savages think that everybody that looks like me is, just somebody that's going to kneel down and kiss their sneakers. So, there's just got to be a sorting process. That's all. And some people are going to grow strong and they're going to learn, and other people are going to get plowed under, and it's going to result in eventually, 20, 30 years from now, you're going to have a very strong and smaller and more worthwhile race of people that might even have an identity. They might think they're more than an economic unit or a civic placeholder.
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree
it's
with that.
a good process.
I think anybody who is looking towards the future as somebody who has their own identity needs to learn from people who have been minority groups in other places. Everybody from the Jews to the Gypsies, to the Parsis in India, to the Chinese in Singapore. We need to have something more than an economic identity.
So for the handbook, just briefly for the handbook,
Yeah.
We got now 400 or 500 guys that listen to this. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're out there with your wife who was raised to believe she was queen of the world, she's the beauty standard of the globe. Okay. If she gets into a confrontation and mouths off to any man or any woman of a heavenly hue, slap her across the face, call her a bitch, tell her to shut up, and take her out of there. Okay? That's it. The end of a problem. Unless there's a female police officer there that's going to arrest you for this, okay? In which case, that's fine, because you develop your street cred, you get respect with this woman, and she gets what she deserves, because now she's left to the mercy of what she wanted to be at the mercy of, and you're no longer protecting her, okay? So even in front of cops, do it, and let them haul you away, okay? And then let them protect her, and see how much they protect her. Okay, so a slap's not going to hurt her. It's reminding her to stop being a screaming banshee and be quiet so you can take her to the situation. Sorry, young lady. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've never slapped a woman. Okay. I don't have to. I just have to snarl at them. And
I would hardly call what she was doing, though. I understand why it's wrong, why you just never speak with these people. Okay, I concede that, but what she was doing was not hysterical or shrieking or anything like that. At the end, she was really scared.
Well, the whole process is
building up. Yeah.
As soon as she opens her mouth, okay, it's going to build towards hysteria. That's what happens. Right.
Okay. Yeah, because you're doing, I'm doing everything I can and it's not working and it's getting worse, and that's what then the fear builds up, And so, okay, I want to show you another video, and for the record, I don't have any sympathy for these people whatsoever. These people can go straight to hell. They live in a very fancy home. They live in this huge mansion.
I saw that video. They're outside of St. Louis. They're defense attorneys, right?
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so you've seen the video. Do you need to review it here?
No.
Okay. Well, let me say. Okay, here's one thing I want to point out in both cases. All right, so let's say, let me pose this as a question, James. If you were somewhere among the Bantu and one of them pointed a gun at you, I'm not saying that you would feel fear, but, because you're that kind of crazy hero that doesn't experience fear, I guess. But you would take it seriously, right? You'd be like, okay, this guy has a gun. There's a good chance he's actually going to shoot me, right?
I experience fear a lot. I don't experience fear among my traditional enemies because I've had so much experience with them. But what has happened over the past 4 years after I get into a confrontation, armed or unarmed, with my traditional enemies, whenever the danger passes, I'll end up with a real bad adrenaline dump, and it'll adversely affect my health.
Okay.
And it's really bad. So if they're pointing guns at me,
they're trying to do something, right? So, but in both of these cases, white people are pointing guns at black people, and black people just think it's hilarious and not even the slightest threat.
It is funny because it's evidence of fear. Okay, so.
But it's not a threat. Like if
it's not a threat. It's showing. If somebody pulls out a knife and they show it to you, they're not going to stab you.
Right.
Unless they have you cornered, okay, and they're capable of overpowering you. Okay, so it's called showing. It's a true sign of fear. That's what you're doing. Now, if the guy is coming towards you and he's got his hand behind his back, okay, well, then you need to worry, okay, because the guy's trying to get close enough so he doesn't miss with whatever he's got for you. Yeah, so they know. I mean, these are people that know this. Oh, this is white people with guns. This is funny. And particularly suburban white people with guns.
Yeah, so that was my point in both of these, is that even, goes back to the gun thing, even if you have guns, you have terrific weapons, you have a huge collection, you have piles and piles of ammo, most of the time, you're not going to do anything, and everybody else knows you're not going to do anything. And this is how the Second Amendment has been gutted without any change in the law or any.
The day I came back to Baltimore, a young Belfast man was executed by a SWAT team. I think it was in Montgomery County, Maryland, after somebody triggered a red flag boot and shoot warrant on this guy. So the same people in Baltimore City, every day for 30 years in Baltimore City, a SWAT team kicked in a door between 4:30 and 4:45 in the morning. Every day. Okay. These people have a lot of practice doing this. They were doing this in a drug war. They were really practicing. Unbeknownst to them, they thought they were fighting a drug war, but really they were practicing developing methods for serving red flag warrants on American gun owners. That's what they were practicing doing. And now that's the main thing that's going to be used for. And the other thing they were doing is they were building huge levels of resentment towards people that were of the same ethnicity of about half or more of the cops that would serve these things, okay? So they were building racial resentment amongst a minority of people who would be unleashed on the same gun owners that the people tormenting this minority of people would also later be unleashed on. So you're caught between two fires, like Stand Watie and the Cherokee in 1861. So these people, these defense lawyers, are in the business to making sure Jamal and Tyrone can get back on the street and point a gun at me. So I thought it was hilarious too. I mean, really, I enjoyed. I watched it twice with a friend of mine, and we just laughed our asses off. It was fun. Now the situation is, if wherever you are, you cannot use lethal force to protect property. Okay? And in most places where most people are, it might not be most municipalities, but where most people reside, which is blue areas, you cannot protect yourself unless you can prove evidence that you suffered from a disparity of force, which means they had the gun and you didn't. Okay? Because once you pull out the gun, you have the power of God, the way people look at it. Joseph Campbell talked about this. The 9mm in America is basically the avatar of the death god in our modern society, which since it's totally materialistic and there's no metaphysical element to it, only respects death as the final arbiter. the inability to protect property leads people to be even more fearful about protecting their own body. So you have to be able to prove that you retreated. So coming outside of your residence, that's breaking the rule right there. Okay, you're advancing to protect property. Okay, so you need to have a place in your house, which is basically like the keep in the medieval castle where you would retreat to for your last defense. And you have to retreat to that. You can't even keep them from coming in your front door in most municipalities in this country. And you want to have different levels of weaponry in different portions of the house that you're defending. If you're only willing to defend your property, or your person or your loved ones with a gun, if that's the only thing you're willing to do, then make it into a popsicle, okay, and set it off. That's my recommendation, because essentially you're going to suffer more torment by using that gun to defend yourself, your property, your loved ones, than you will ever suffer by making it into an explosive popsicle, because the pain's going to be over immediately when you do that. Okay, so for instance, you want to have a weapon in your car that's legal for you to have in your car. Okay, maybe a hammer, a wrench, a tire iron, or something, so that you can protect yourself while getting out of your car and retreating to your house. Okay, or protect yourself while you're sitting in your car. Then you need a weapon in your front yard. Okay, to protect yourself in the front yard in case you cannot retreat, or in case you have to like rescue a son or a daughter or a mother or a wife from her own stupidity on the front lawn. Lawn bricks, best thing, lawn brick. It's already there. It's got a reason to be there, okay? Inside of the house, you could actually have something that's a dedicated weapon. On the porch, I suggest
kind of a fan
a doorstop.
of like weapons as decorations. Like, oh, we keep this beautiful.
Sensei Steve's girlfriend had this old cast iron, gold painted iron that old ladies used to use to iron clothes out with. We use that for a doorstop. I picked that up to defend myself once when I was on the porch. It's a decorative doorstop, and it'll cave a head in. Yeah, so all that kind of stuff. You don't start using the bats and the dedicated weapons until you're inside your house, and then you use less lethal weapons on the exterior of the interior. Then as you get towards the center of the house, now you're going to big knives. Then when you get in your bedroom, then you got your shotgun and your handgun. Okay. The handgun's for your woman when she's hiding in the closet with the kids, and the shotgun's for you, keeping them, from coming in once they kick in the door.
I want to point out a couple things. These guys have a enormous home in a neighborhood of enormous expensive homes, and they're, as far as I can tell, they're two pale faces who both work and don't even have any kids. And so just imagine this neighborhood is full of people like this. And on a day, on a Tuesday afternoon, this huge neighborhood is unguarded. They had this like little puny iron gate that was considered the border between private property and public property. So when the mob came through that gate, now you're on private property. Well, it's all symbolic. Like if there's nobody there.
This is the devil's bargain that's been going on for 100 years in this country, and you can see it where there were neighborhoods just like this, beautiful neighborhoods in inner city Baltimore. And once you no longer have an extended family with sons and uncles and granddads living in that house, it is now indefensible. Once you become the nuclear family, wherever you live, however many guns you have, you can have a howitzer. Well, you know what? You got a howitzer in your front yard. That's a crew-served weapon. You can't even operate it yourself, okay? So once you no longer have a crew, at least a work crew at your house, it is indefensible. You're totally at the mercy of the police, who are just a bunch of goons who are in charge of terrorizing other groups of people who don't own these houses, so that group of people will terrorize you, and then you have to move, and it flips the real estate, and then it's a continual real estate flipping migration.
The police, a few days after that occurred, a crew of pale-faced policemen went to confiscate those weapons that they showed. Now, there's even rumors going around that the woman with her pistol, that little pistol was not functional. that there's something wrong with it. I don't know what's wrong with it, jammed. But then they took it back to the police department and repaired it so that she could be charged with brandishing a weapon. So but then the couple said, they released some kind of press release saying that, these police are just doing their job and they were not happy about this, but they came over to our house and served us with this warrant and took away our guns. And I mean, it's just all such a ridiculous sham. Yeah, they did it. Of course they did. Okay. Of course. This is, these guys have nothing, no moral values except their pension. Their pension. That's the only thing the cop cares about. His pension. The best cop in the country. The most upstanding, reliable, and, very wonderful cop that he's your cousin or whatever. He still only cares about his pension. That's it. That's all.
Yeah. So they're the last people basically with a decent pension. They actually make a huge amount of money by my standards. There are these 4 cops in Baltimore City who are police detectives, and one of them is a sergeant of police detectives. Very handsome, looks like he could be the next James Bond. Very handsome, light-skinned fancy warrior, okay? Very dapper, like upscale. I mean, this guy spends a lot of money on his clothes, okay? He and another dark deity and 2 Latino police officers, all police detectives, abducted in Baltimore County, outside of their municipality. This isn't like LA. Baltimore County, Baltimore City are separate. Abducted a home contractor, kidnapped him, and had him get money out of the ATM for him. And now only one of these guys, I think, is up on charges. So the case isn't really important. This kind of corruption goes on all the time with cops in the Baltimore area. But when I looked at their salaries, okay, their base salary on the lowest ranking guy was over $80,000. And $80,000 a year is the most I ever made as a supermarket manager when I was in charge of 110 people. And I had a more dangerous job than these cops ever had because I wasn't packing a gun and I didn't have a vest and I had to deal with violent criminals all the time. Now, their overtime went up to like $150,000 a year after overtime. And all of them had very suspiciously round numbers at I never had a tax return that had 3 zeros at the end of it. So these things are obviously just like padded salaries. And this isn't including shit like they're doing, like stealing cash out of this guy's bank account. My co-manager one time had 3 police detectives come to him and flash their badges and say, you're going to cash checks for us out of this woman's bank account because it's my girlfriend. And then when he didn't do it, they harassed him. Okay. So this kind of stuff is just like padding on top of the already huge salary. And their benefits are as good as any politician's benefits. Okay. So these are actually people that were elevated to a knightly class above us peasants. There's like no dude that doesn't own a company in a place like Baltimore City that makes more money than Baltimore City cop. And this is the same thing. Like, the guys that attacked me through my whole life, they all had more money than me. They were either cops or rednecks in pickup trucks who had jobs making more money than I made, or kids that were on welfare who their welfare stipend was more than what I made bending my back for a living. People that commit violence against other people usually have more material assets and more regular income than the people that they attack. That's usually the way it goes. Yet Americans almost all believe that it's poor people attacking rich people. And that's just news programming.
Oh, that's just social. We had that lovely young woman, AOC, tell us that people were stealing bread from grocery stores because their children were hungry. When they were like, actually in my area when the riots began, there were not a lot of riots here, but they went out to like these fancy suburbs and busted into the high-end retailers, like, you know, they're going after Chanel or whatever. They're not.
Well, you know, this is the tragedy that she's got these soy boys coaching her. Okay, if I were her late night counselor, okay, I would have advised her to use bread in its metaphorical 1970s blaxploitation context, and it would have worked a lot better. It would have been cool. She'd have looked just as cute saying it. I mean, the stupid look on her face is part of her appeal. Okay, I mean, it's one of the greatest tragedies of our age is that I'm not her personal bodyguard and advisor. I'm getting over it. Okay, but so she should have been advised to say otherwise. It's too.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's funny. But yeah, you know, they're stealing bread. I mean, it's obvious that these people are hungry.
They're hungry, but and hungry in this, you know, the most obese society in human history. The Atlanteans were not nearly as obese as we were,
Yeah.
as we are. So, I'm 30 pounds overweight and I feel like an emaciated bone rat when I walk by most Americans. It's gotten even worse. I mean, I can't run into a dude that's half my age that's not 100 pounds heavier than me. And they're all built like glazed donuts.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
a Michelin Man convention.
You're not talking about big burly, yeah. No.
No, you're talking about softies.
Pear-shaped, yeah, not good.
Yeah, so I think I actually it was really funny. We spent time. Mescaline Franklin and I went to Oliver's studio to film some hobo history, and Oliver was there with this towering paragon of Bantu virtue, Tay, his cousin. This dude could be a heavyweight contender. Okay. I mean, I could definitely find 3 bar bouncers that he could knock out, and he could end up getting a fight with Tyson Fury if I just managed him for a few years. Okay, they're very, very impressive dude. These guys are so funny; they actually punch each other while they're eating pizza. Okay, it's like the Hodge twins, only they hit each other and they're like 4 times as dark because these guys are from Jamaica. You know, and
I respect the Hodge twins for their
Right.
hustle. They, you know,
So,
they're making
yeah,
good
so
use of their.
these guys are basically like deeply stained teakwood versions of the Hodge twins. And we're filming hobo history and we sit down and what was really funny is Oliver's children come up to me and they jump up and down. His daughter was even doing a spaghetti leg dance in front of me, rolling her arms around over her head in ecstasy that Mr. James was there. And then Oliver just stands there and looks up at Tay and he's like, yeah, you're not special. This guy's, look how they dance for him. You know, you're not special. So they like it when I come out there because the only time that their old man will turn on the air conditioning is when I spend the night there. And they thank him for turning on the air conditioning. He says, don't thank me. We had a white man in the house last night. You don't expect him to sleep in 95 degree heat, do you? So we go to film the hobo history and with all the lights in there, it's really hot. So the sweat starts dripping off of us. 2 pale-faced savages and 2, actual middle class guys that are doing very well. I mean, Oliver's got like 6 cars in his driveway. You know, he's like going around buying up, deals from the shamdemic. People going out of business. He's buying their stuff. He got like $100,000 worth of video equipment for like $2,000. So, we're sitting there and as soon as the sweat starts to drip, Tay says, hey, bro, it's a little bit hot in here. Oliver gets up in disgust. I think he might have used the N-word, okay? And said, what is the matter with you? We got white men here. You're not allowed to complain about the heat when we got white men here. If it's 20 below and you're freezing your black ass off, yeah, it's okay for you to be the first one to complain about the cold. But it's like, get it together.
I have pride like that too.
You can't complain about the heat till the white man complains about the heat. So these guys are hilarious. We had a lot of fun, and we're all we're all getting along. If somebody comes and attacks that house, okay, we're fighting as a unit. Okay, that's it. We're all fighters. We've all trained together. Okay, we've done stuff together, and you know what? Oliver's got a gun. He's got it broken down and put away because he knows. He knows what. He's got a sledgehammer. He's got a bat. He's got a monkey wrench. He's got a ball peen hammer. He's got a camera that weighs 150 pounds. Okay. That's what he's using to defend his house. Okay. He's smart enough to know that in Maryland, you cannot use a firearm to defend yourself in your house or you're in big trouble. In fact, his neighbor tried to trigger a red flag law on him because he asked him for some advice on cleaning his deer hunting rifle. And then the guy got shitty with him. He was some pale-faced faggot, and he tried to trigger a red flag law on Oliver. And I told Oliver, I said, you know what? The only reason why you didn't get shot in your bed at 4:41 in the morning is because you're dark. That's it. I said, you need to keep in mind that right now you're in this power position. So, I don't want to hear any shit about the Hobo History as my channel. It's all you. And I'm just a hired help. You duct tape me to the chair and you whip my ass until I say what you want me to say. That's it. I said, I want to see MLK banners up on Hobo History, BLM, the whole 9 yards. Okay. I said, I'm going to bask in, the protective ebb and glow of your aura. Okay?
Yeah, it's really true.
You got to understand how to work alliances. And there was a time when it was the other way around in certain areas that I lived in where I would come out to his car and I would walk him to the house so nobody would call the cops for seeing a black man getting out of the car in that neighborhood. Okay. So it wasn't too long ago that in some areas we're trying to make sure he doesn't have to deal with the cops because he's the wrong guy in that neighborhood. Now, he's currently in an area where it's okay for any of us to be out there, but you got to understand, am I in a neighborhood where it's okay to have a paleface come into my front door, or do I have to go out there and walk him from the car so all my neighbors know it's okay? Okay, and when I'm in an area where it's okay for a brown guy to go from his car to my house, or do I need to go out there and meet him? Okay, so these are the kind of calculations that people like us are used to making. For instance, my friend Mescaline has, mixed race friends, different mixes, and they're already used to working these kind of protocols. But you've got to, when you're with a like-minded soul of a different race, you have to be honest about, okay, who has the government favor right now? Who's the media darling in this situation right now? And we're in his shadow. Okay. So you got to know how to work it that way. And it's going to change from place to place, particularly as the media and their deep state masters get better and better at playing off different groups of people against each other. This is going to be more important in the future. Eventually, they're going to piss off some feral palefaces. Okay.
Yeah, here's a question I have. For years and years now, there's the group we might call Wignats. You know who I'm talking about?
Somebody explain that to me after you did sort of thing. Okay, so yeah.
So
yeah, that was.
There's a group of people who will say, "Oh, pretty soon people are going to wake up. They're going to start waking up." And every year I'm like, nah, they're really not going to wake up, because people get used to stuff, and we're just getting more and more used to everything. However, in my real life, I have interacted with a couple of people who were, we'll just say they're acquaintances, who are making like a little bit of noise about how, well, I'm a white guy and actually I didn't do anything wrong. And my son is a white young man and he didn't do anything wrong. And so I think that for the first time, I actually do think that some people are taking notice. But I think you mentioned that a family member moved in the other direction, like that she's supporting BLM. So can you talk about that?
Oh, I have friends that have BLM signs on their lawn that are BLM members. And you can't try to, these people have been indoctrinated into a certain worldview, and there is a worldwide media machine that has indoctrinated them. That's above your pay grade. Okay. And unless they come to you and say, this doesn't make any sense, even then you got to be real careful. I'll give a couple of nuggets of information I think maybe they could digest that maybe eventually helps in awakening. I'll give you one example. A beautiful mixed race girl who's the daughter of a mixed race friend of mine. She's actually very awakened to what's going on in the world. And we've had to warn her, okay, that she cannot be free with her beliefs. She might look like what Miss America is now supposed to look like. Okay. She might be people that, are allowed to defend themselves. And if you defend yourselves against them, okay, you're evil. She might have this ethnic identity, but it will not save her from being politically incorrect. So, and this thing, like the BLM thing, is all about white people. It's all about people who identify as white and perceive that as a badge of guilt that they have to overcome. That's what BLM's about. The woke black people that I know, I'm talking about like dudes with like dark skin, okay, that would have been considered Negroes 200 years ago. They really, they're not part of BLM. The people that are part of BLM that are African American are usually heavily mixed race, and they're usually involved with Caucasian partners in their intimate life, and it's more of a reflection of the views and the guilt of their partner that's been inculcated in them, and you can't fix that. You know, I hide my beliefs from many people who are very close to me, and you know, if I'm coaching somebody, my beliefs don't mean anything. I'm just trying to help this person be better at defending themselves. When they come to me, and honestly, when my mixed race friend comes to me and honestly asks me about the danger to his mixed race daughter, I tell him, look, the people who attack her are going to be darker skinned girls of her same race. That's who's going to attack her. And you have to realize that. You can't pretend that some pretty pale-faced girls are going to be beating up on her. No, that's not going to happen. She's going to be attacked by darker-skinned girls, okay? Now, he doesn't know this because he's a suburban guy, and he's a lot whiter than I am mentally and civically and everything, okay? And when us two are together, I'm the Bantu, not him.
I think I've called him before your whitest friend.
Yeah, like, he's actually my whitest friend, and he's like 70% African. Yeah. Okay, so, and then I will not pursue that. I'll just say, look, you need to know this, and you just need to trust me on this, that this is a dynamic for protecting your daughter. And I don't try to expand that into a discussion. Okay? I don't. Okay? I'll even try to protect him from trying to wake up because I don't think he could handle it. Most people can't handle reality. They can't. They have to have a myth that's built for them. If the people that build your myth for you don't have your best interest in mind, that's going to be a toxic and corrosive myth. And it's going to end up destroying your sanity, okay, unless you can retreat into a utopian fantasy. So, I don't try to wake anybody up. It's just bad, you know, where there's less than 1% of the population even has the capacity to wake up, and half of those people, it's going to drive them insane. And almost no women can survive being awakened to the reality, okay? So if you're a guy, you can only give her a very edited, limited, like, look, this is a direct danger to you. Just take my word for it. So if you can't develop that trust with your woman, if she doesn't trust you enough to just say, look, I'm not going to tell you how I learned this, well, then you've got a problem with your relationship anyway. Okay? That's it. I got a good story. My landlady, okay, asked me she wasn't strong enough. She has some disability. She's an older lady. Asked me to take some packages to the post office. And I did. And there's only one kind of person that works behind the counter in the post office in Baltimore County, okay? And she is a queen, okay, this person that works behind the counter. And things were going very well. She had an idea there would be some kind of problem with addressing the package. She followed me in. I had already taken care of the problem. She starts an argument, just like this dumb bitch in that parking lot that ends up pulling her gun, okay? She starts an argument with these two queens. The small one was a lot bigger and stronger than me. The big one was like 6'8", 260 pounds, all muscle. She made Serena Williams look like a Barbie doll, okay? And my landlady, okay, this dumb bitch, I told her she was a dumb bitch, okay, comes in there and essentially picks a fight with these two girls after I've got them wrapped around my fingers. So I just walked away. Let her argue with him. And I was like, don't ask me to do a favor like that again. You know, we're done on this level. Okay. And if you do this to me while you're driving me to the dollar store to buy 100 pounds of canned goods that you can't lift, and you get yourself in an argument with some Bantu warrior, okay, his head will be your hood ornament. I will bring the head back to you and I will put it on your hood, and then you will watch me eviscerate the first responder. Okay. And then you will watch me be killed. Okay. And you will have that on your conscience. That is what will happen. Okay. Never ask me, okay, to protect you, because I will not. I will just go do something horrible. Okay. That you won't be able to live with. Okay. You'll be drugging yourself into a stupor until you OD. If you ever ask me to protect you. Okay. So, I won't even go outside in her company anymore when I'm back in Baltimore. I was like, you stay locked in there. You're not even coming in the yard. That's it. Okay. But so this is it's very difficult to protect women when they think that they can go out there and do what that woman did in that video, where they're going to mouth off to people who have a very high level of social privilege. This is what used to get poor men tortured and killed when they're wives. Chris Rock did a really funny comedy thing about this like 30 years ago, where, you know, the brother's, you know, in the passenger seat, and his wife or his girlfriend picks an argument with the cops just so the cops will beat his ass and drag him off the prison, because she's got another boyfriend waiting in the wings that's got like a better marijuana source or something. Okay, so now we're in a position where the biggest danger to the pale-face man is his woman. That's who's going to get him attacked by a mob. That's who's going to get him killed by the cops.
I want to say something, okay? I have an acquaintance who comes from another country, a country that is of many mixed ethnicities, and everybody's a little mixed anyway. So she needed some help with her papers, her documents, you know, so she's in the consulate office, and there's a woman there who is a queen and who is not equipped with a large mental capacity, but she needs, you know, my friend, she needs this paper signed or stamped or whatever by the bureaucracy. And so the next time she went to the office, she brought a little present, you know, like a little candy or something, and chatted about her family and stuff. So this is like what I do if I ever have to, whenever I'm in bureaucracy land, which is usually staffed by those people, or other things. It's like you have to have a little bit of a third world mindset where you don't get something because it's fair or because it follows procedure or whatever. You get something because somebody wants to do something nice for you, or because you gave them a reason to do something nice for you. So I think personally, it's pretty easy to butter people up, you know, like tell them that you look nice today, and what's that perfume you're wearing, or like even women, you know, because everybody thinks that there's natural hostility between women, but I'm very good at charming other women.
Yeah, I can charm guys as easily as I can charm girls. I mean, it's a necessary skill set when you're working in certain environments, when you're coaching. Yeah. You got to be able to talk to a fighter's mother.
Any environment. I'm going to stop you there. It's working in any environment, because I worked in, serious office work. I did office work, you know, like everybody's college educated.
That's probably tougher.
Whatever.
That's probably tougher than the kind of work I had to do. Well, you're stuck together.
You're stuck together, but you also, I mean, it's easier and harder, I think, in different ways. But, I mean, the point is you can charm those people, too. Like, if you see yourself as a sorcerer or a devil of some kind, you can charm people. You can do deviltry on the friendly way. And you'll get farther than you will, like, asserting your rights or demanding your...
and you have to learn that. And that's the big lie of democracy, that we're all representatives of the system that represents us, and our job is to point the system at each other. That's like the big, to me, core lie of, you know, our modern democratic society. And I actually... a friend of mine gave me a book that was written in 1943, Psychology for the Fighting Man, that was actually written by and for the U.S. Army. And it lays a lot of this stuff out. It discusses propaganda. It discusses race and different things. And it's basically predicts everything that's going on here right now with our society, how you represent the system. It was honest. It was honest about that. And people think that somehow they're representing an abstract right, something that some fantasy about what's good and right. And they think they're representing that because they don't have any religion. They don't have any faith. Look, if you stayed home, if you didn't go to church, they tested your faith and it was found wanting. Okay. That happened. That happened this year. The reason why, the BLM thing exploded the way it did and the way it's continuing the way it did is because during the shamdemic, Christians stayed home and they didn't go to church. And people of other religions stayed home and didn't go to the holy places. That's why this went down the way it did, because they knew then that they could just use the news to tell you not to do what is supposed to be the most important thing in your life, and you only do for 1 hour a week, and that you'll do it, that you'll get a better than 95% compliance. They knew then that they could rule you with just the oracle. So that TV in your living room, the computer, your smartphone, okay, your device of supplication, that's like an ancient Greek spending every day in the presence of the Pythia at the oracle of the shining God. It's going to blast your mind. We're literally in contact, the normal American is literally in contact with our subconscious and subtextual definition of the divine in intimate contact with that 8-10 hours a day. Okay. Particularly during this lockdown. I visited some very close friends and family who met me on their patios and they all gained weight and on their faces were just like writ large and deep with terror. These people were haunted. They looked like on the verge of sanity. They couldn't hug me. They couldn't shake my hand. They had to show the babies to me. And they're literally trapped. You can see signs of sorrow on the outside where they're allowed to go out in the yard, but the fear has got them. They're not even weeding.
I feel this.
They're not even weeding.
Among my loved ones and among myself, I am not afraid of the virus whatsoever. I don't care about it. I probably already had it. I will have it again. I don't care. But the reality of taking my daughter to the grocery store and having her break down in tears because everybody's wearing masks and waiting in line and just acting so creepy. The fact that playgrounds are still taped up with caution tape. No, they did open the beaches, so we have been able to go to the beaches and we've been visiting with certain family members and friends, but it's absolutely oppressive.
People need to know that right now they have a new religion being installed in their minds because we basically all admitted that whatever religion we had, it wasn't worth catching a cold. Okay. So the
if
system.
You think about that,
empty altar.
My grandmother, who is dead, she would have delighted at the thought of being a martyr in a time of persecution, of going to church, catching a cold and dying while being persecuted for her faith. She was a person of real deep faith. And she would have thought that would be grand, a great way to go out.
Well, so the system has an instinct. I'm not saying it's any conscious conspiracy. All these things are reflections of plans that have been worked out by outside consultants ahead of time for the systems of control. Where they talk to people like me, okay, or even ask me to write a story about this what if and get ideas out of the story. That's how you use fiction writers for projects like this, for modeling it decades ahead of time. And so I believe in what Uncle Ted said, that the system develops an instinct and these things will happen. And the system was hit with an overwhelming realization that it had no faith at any percentage level higher than 1%, which means that at least half of those people are yearning for a faith because they don't have it. And the other half of those people might be conflicted enough that they could be trusted enough to be heretics, so that the people yearning for the faith, which are largely going to be found on the left in this iteration of this, in this Reformation, they're going to have somebody to persecute that they can coalesce around. So we are in I call it we're not in a civil war. We're in a reconstruction, but it's more than that. We're in a religious Reformation, because our de facto religion, which is money, okay, even that got crushed for this thing. Our de facto religion, the religion that we permitted to take away our other religions and have us go to work on Sunday, okay, or Saturday. Even that capstone religion, that ultimate degeneration of Western faith, that was seen as having evaporated, which was true, because people stayed home from church. Even the most fundamentalist Christians I know stayed home from church, and their pastor agreed that it was a good thing to do. He was seduced by the oracle of the shining God and decided that it was okay to hold YouTube church. We are now in a Reformation. I don't know who Martin Luther was, okay? I don't know who Calvin's going to be, okay? I would suggest that there's going to be more warlocks burned than witches in this iteration of it, because the system has, the faith that was burning witches during the Reformation, at least the faith that burned most of them, they were very threatened by the feminine, because you were talking about a bunch of gay dudes that were into torturing women who practiced home remedies, and they wanted to get the money for saying prayers over you instead of, the old lady at the edge of town treating you with her herbs. But now the system keepers are more jealous of the masculine, just like the priests, the preachers and the ministers of the Reformation were very jealous of the feminine. And even the Puritans were still very jealous of the feminine. And they got even worse than the Catholics, because they didn't even have Mother Mary to shine a light on this thing, right? They are, when I read about Cotton Mather speaking about what a good thing it was that this woman, whose only crime was she said to the judge, my prayers are between God and I, and you don't have any business in them. They killed her for that, okay? In, 1681, okay, whenever it was, the Salem witch trials. They smashed her. They didn't burn her. They smashed her between these big planks, like a vice. That old woman, that was extreme rage against the feminine. Okay. So you got this polarity that flips around. So memories of that, cultural memories of that persecution of the feminine has been reversed to do this persecution of the masculine. That was the system persecuting the feminine back there. That wasn't the masculine persecuting the feminine. That was the system persecuting the feminine. But that is now being used to get feminized men and feminine people of all 682 genders, whatever they are, to now persecute the masculine. So I think you're going to have more men are going to be the persecuted witches now. Then you'll have women, but there'll be women out there too.
Those two examples that we covered earlier are pale-faced couples.
Yeah.
I think that's significant, actually. And it's really weird in Portland. We have seen just last night 2 different elderly women out there trying to stand up to the demonstrators. I mean, really ill-advised. Actually, one of them was pushing a walker, and she had a sign on her walker that said BLM on her walker, and still the masked, Antifa dudes were pouring stuff over her head. And
they know that the BLM sign is mostly used as a defensive measure. Like in Baltimore County, in Baltimore City, if you see a BLM sign, those are white hipsters hiding inside.
Yeah, it's like painting the sacrificial blood over your door.
Yeah, it's Passover.
Yeah.
It's Passover.
But my point is that, I'm just trying to think of who has been publicly shamed and pilloried for this as yet. And
this isn't happening, as far as I know, it's not happening in front of houses. Actually, the people outside of Portland are much more worried about this than the people I know inside of Portland. I'm looking forward to seeing what it's like on the ground. Hopefully they got a respectable level of crime, in the outlying areas where I'll be, but I'm not going to be going down to watch some street theater, in the city center. As soon as I get off the train, getting out of city center as quick as I can. I'm not,
Yeah.
right?
I'm
I
not,
don't
that's
care.
why I'm not too worried. I keep an eye on it and I text T-Rex, like the mob is on the move, but they do move a bit, but they concentrate really at that courthouse. So hopefully they'll
Yeah,
just
I'm
keep
just
doing
worried about getting over the bridge.
that. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
bridge that I've either got to take a bus over or walk over. Once I'm across that bridge, I really don't care. I'll sit on the sidewalk and get a rest if I'm too tired. It's, because even if Portland gets 20 times as dangerous as it was the last time I was there, it'll still be a lot nicer than 1982 Baltimore, which is a hell of a lot nicer than Baltimore is now. So,
Yeah.
and right now, places like Baltimore City and Baltimore County, for the ordinary person who lives in a house, it's a much safer than it used to be. It's a lot safer than it used to be. And in areas that have gotten really viciously dangerous because of the drug war, those places are now much safer. And part of it, I think, is because more people are home, so people are worried about witnesses.
The Bantus are worried about the virus, right?
Yes, there's that too. They're pale face without a mask. It's like, I did have one run-in with Hazelnut Van Helsing, so being Dracula was super cool, having crowds of young thugs who previously would have at least tried me, just like scattering like leaves before an autumn wind when I come like Willis Wetzel down the sidewalk, just breathing my corrosive air that's going to scorch their lungs. That's pretty cool. I was momentarily empathized with Count Dracula over his run-in with Van Helsing, though, after this dude that looked like an oversized Livingston Bramble wanted to beat my face for, he called me a disease-spreading MFer, that was pretty shaky, that was, I survived that. I was saved by a Bantu warrior who actually on 2 previous occasions tried with 3 other dudes. Okay. And he's actually the guy that saved me from having to disembowel Hazelnut Van Helsing and then having to stab a, BPD officer. So, I call him Muscle White because he always wears bright white shirts. He gets them starched very well, and he's very muscular and very dark. And he looked like he was the younger half brother of the guy that was attacking me. And I guess he informed him that I was their pet white man and to leave me alone because the guy immediately stopped wolfing, which is the closest thing to apology you're going to get from these people. Okay. Immediate silence, go the other way, get in the car, go. So anyhow, it's been so much nicer. People can sit out on their porches in Baltimore County. People can walk their dogs in Baltimore County without getting beat up and mugged. So there's a lot of upsides to this. Downside is if you're in a mid-sized city, for instance, Portland was selected for this because there's a large base of militant leftists there that you could use for this, but it was mainly selected for this because Portland was absolutely the safest mid-sized American city in the country. The safest. So now they have more murder and mayhem in a month. And we're not talking about the riots. We're talking about regular crime than they used to have in a year.
Yeah, it's
okay,
it's the dampening, the police are dampened and the ordinary criminals are emboldened. So the riot is like a smokescreen. And the riots themselves are like part smokescreen and part violence. Like they have lots of people who really are just hanging out and being
there's lots of purposes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people, a lot of different purposes feeding into these activities.
Yeah.
So I'm really thrilled. I think it's going to make America a better place, to be, I'm like a rabid non-American. Okay. So I
urge caution.
I never thought that somebody that went overseas to firebomb brown people so that Dick Cheney could get a construction contract. I never thought that they were serving me. Okay. I only thought that they were helping me out because the world's greatest war machine was elsewhere rather than like grinding me up here. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I want to urge caution because, I have family members and acquaintances in other countries that were once first world countries and no longer are. You know, you are a person, and I am too, that kind of welcomes discomfort. You know, I also feel like I'm not going to be the first person to complain about the heat or the cold. You know, so we're not like people who seek a lot of material comforts, but most Americans have no idea the level of abundance that they're accustomed to, and that simply doesn't exist in other countries. And, you know, when you break something, you get to this point where it's not easy to get another one. And so I think we're entering that phase of America where a lot of these cities have been burned out and hollowed out, and they're not going to get rebuilt. I mean, we've seen that in Detroit, obviously. We've seen it in bits and pieces of other cities who suffered from melanated blight, but we're going to see it in places, all these cities that have been damaged. They're not going to come back. They're not going to be rebuilt. The general safety level is going to go down, and it might momentarily bump up here and there, but this is a long-term trend that there's just no such thing as a first world country anymore. You have to get used to that. So what I'm trying to say is be careful what you wish for, because a lot of people wish for collapse or whatever so we can rebuild. But what I'm trying to say is that there's no guarantee that you will rebuild. And I know what we wish for doesn't really matter because we're just talking on the internet. But
yeah, we're probably looking at a long period of gradual decline.
We're in the middle of it. We're in the middle of it.
Best guess.
Yeah, it's well underway. We're decades into it. It's just hard to see because, and that's something else I've said about this, is that things are being revealed which have really already occurred, but they're just being revealed to our eyes now. So I think I'm going to wrap that one up for an episode. Hey, stay tuned for part 2 of this podcast. It's really a separate podcast, but I'm putting them together for a double episode. All right, James, welcome back to the Crackpot Podcast.
Well, thanks for having me back on.
It's your podcast, after all.
I'm just the monkey. You are the organ grinder.
I'm the what?
You're the organ grinder. I'm the monkey. I'm the monkey.
All right. I see. Well, I could never do a podcast by myself, nor with anyone else, so this is the way it is.
After the last podcast we recorded, and right after the recording, the neighbors called the police on Rick. I'm staying with Punky and Rick because Rick started up his truck in the driveway and it was loud. So he asked me for some advice on handling the police, and also his house got flooded, so I was helping Rick take the carpet out and rolling it up. So I made sure I was out there working while the cops showed up and talked to him, and the cops were actually very cool. And this is like the future of policing. This is a small municipality in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, right outside of Pittsburgh. And I think this is the future of policing where it holds, in line with a real community, which this is. It's a pretty nice place. It's very pos. There's like a BLM store on Main Street across from Lincoln Avenue Brewery. And but everybody's very nice and sissy-fied around here. And they just gave him tips on how to be less, to make the neighbors feel better about him being a fit ghost man in his driveway. These were Caucasian boomer faggots that made the call. They were kind of like our elder half of the worst generation in human history. Rick and I are kind of like on the tail end of the boomer thing, like 10, 15 years older than us. And it was interesting that the police were really looking to us as kind of allies. The house next door has an upside down American flag. Rick told me he got off of social media because he got so much flack for taking a picture of his neighbor's upside down flag and posting up there and saying that he didn't feel too good about that because he still considered himself an American. He's not a jerk like me. He's eccentric, but, he does consider himself an American citizen. And, his grandfather fought in Guadalcanal in the Philippines, so he's got some attachment to the country. The police officers, one of whom was an ex-Marine, told Rick that we know you're the one that made that post on social media about the flag next door. And Rick asked him, he said, well, what do you think about it? They said, well, keep fighting a good fight. We appreciate the support, but we are not in a position where we could complain about anything like that. It's outside of our purview. He said, but chastising me for starting up my truck in my driveway is within your purview, right? And they said, unfortunately, it is. We serve at the pleasure of, this municipality, and we're in charge of enforcing the community standards. So we're looking at where policing can traditionally hold. It's going to be this kind of stuff, like being the chaperone for a bunch of busybodies that, want to point fingers at each other. And they looked at me. They did tell Rick, and the one guy knew about rebuilding trucks, and Rick had built this truck himself. And so he discussed that a little bit with the cop. And then, Rick apologized, and then the guy said, well, I don't gather you're a married man, are you? And Rick said, no, I never did that. And he said, well, the cop said, well, fortunately, you never made that mistake. But he said, essentially, as a police officer now, we're all henpecked husbands to the community. This is what we are now. We're like the henpecked husband. So, congrats on not getting married. And I seconded that. I said, yeah, don't get married, Rick. And, the cops walked by and they had a nice word to say for me. And, they could tell that, we were basically working ghosts of sub-privileged sort. And they were nice to us. So there's always it's always good to get along as nicely as possible with the law enforcement in your area, because at the very least, when they are sick on you, they'll pretend to bite you instead of actually biting you. Because more and more, the people that tell the police what to do are going to be really despised by the police. And they don't appreciate being their proxy actors. So it's just cool to be able to report that.
Well, I agree, and I support the third world mindset, where you're not operating on some kind of objective WASP fairness view of the world. You are operating on kinship ties and business ties and neighborly ties and other value systems. So if you have a chance to be nice to cops, you should do it. And I did it once. I had cops were parked out in the front of the house for a few days. They were observing something going on across the street. And finally they arrested someone. But I took notice of that, and I brought the nice young man dinner one night on a paper plate. And he was really happy, and he knows where I live, and I feel like I did a little favor for my family. It might pay off someday down the line.
Good girl.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, there's so much going on still, and more every day. It just never quits. But one of the things that we should talk about, two things, I don't know if we'll have time. One is I kind of want to show you some video of what happened when BLM was demonstrating outside of a church, partly because the video is kind of shocking, and partly because I want you to talk about what church-going men need to be doing. You wrote a wonderful piece called Usher, which I've linked out many times. I've tweeted that out many times. And you wrote it after, there was a synagogue shooting, but it's really an evergreen piece. Let me see if I can pull this video up for you.
The rise of our new religion. It's been in formation for a while, but it's the new altar creed has risen abruptly, I believe, due to the fact that virtually all religious Americans declined to attend religious services based on media commands from governors.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, here's the first one. So this is like the doorstep of the church.
Don't touch him! Don't fucking touch him! Don't fucking touch him! Don't fucking touch him! Go, brother!
This is at Grace Baptist Church in New York.
Well, I really like these blonde beat guys.
Yeah, no kidding. There's one though, can't find it. Well, I'll show you what happens. We push it inside. It's this one.
Look, if you do not know, I'm a Christian preacher, you dumb fuck.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter. Oh.
Black Lives Matter. No, back up! Back up! You're not gonna do that, boy! You crazy? Word! Come on. Crazy, boy! Ah, knock this shit, boy! It does, bro! This is not... No, bro! Nah, bro, that's not...
Get the fuck out of my face!
God bless you. Jesus loves you.
Jesus don't love you.
Jesus loves you. You take him in? Come on, bro. Don't be disrespectful, guy. Take him
Really upsetting because, just let those guys walk in.
Oh, you can't defend against certain people. So, this is just, you have to let them come in, just like you'd have to let the Lord come in medieval times. If he wanted to come into the church and drag a woman out of there that he thought was too pretty to be a nun, he could do it. I mean, he might end up going to hell, but he's going to get his way during the day. And his dad could give enough money to the bishop, he might still get into heaven. But these, Christianity didn't start with all of these huge churches. They even had, services in catacombs, under the city. So it might have to go back to that, but the function of Christianity as a support system for the U.S. government is now over.
Sit down here. Oh, yeah, come on. Yeah, move over to the door and put the family get in.
Look at what they're doing. Why are you bringing a baby into a church that's Catholic off? You are pissing your nose.
Good morning.
I'm a mom supremacist.
Wow.
So as a mom supremacist, that's the kind of stuff that just really makes me mad, because they let her walk in there by herself. That guy with a vest on, that's some BLM dude, and just right up on the mom.
There's not a protective instinct that's been being scrubbed out of American manhood for 50 or 60 years. I remember Officer Friendly coming to school and telling us kids never to try to defend ourselves if we were attacked, to just do what the person said. This goes way back. I'm pretty old now. I can still remember that from when I was 7 or 8 years old. And the whole idea of having women vote in 1920 was to be able to scare them to death so that they could feel like they were voting in their own personal bodyguards, the police. We're going to protect them from their nasty husbands. This is where it ends up going. Now, I think with what happened during the COVID, I didn't actually say that. I've never even written that. Okay. But what happened with the shamdemic with almost every Christian in this country staying home when they were told to, unconstitutionally. And supposedly these people believe in the Constitution and the Bible and believe that, the relationship with God is more important than the relationship with the governor. They all went against that. Now, the churches have been very closely allied to the U.S. government for its entire history, and were very closely allied in pre-U.S. provincial governments in plantation America before the nation was founded. And they constitute part of the support system, the social support system for the nation state. Even though Christians might outnumber people who feel passionate about left-wing politics and racial politics, they're not willing to fight for that. Okay, and that was obvious. They weren't even willing to be disobedient for that. So if the government is looking for a support system that's going to be aggressive on its behalf at some point, it needs to veer away from these churches and take this religious impulse that people have. Most people have a strong religious impulse to believe in something greater than them, even when they're atheists. And then they'll believe in the collective and usher in the new religion. Okay, it's a religion that's based on guilt. So it actually comes out of Christianity, just like atheism comes out of Christianity. It's not the only religion it comes out of. There's another religion it comes out of that I'm not free to comment on. But it's one of the two religions from which atheism comes. The main religion from which atheism comes.
Knowing some Muslims in town, I think that there will be like an American faction of post-Islamic Muslims too.
Oh, that makes sense because again, it's the same root as the other two religions. So that makes sense. The religious impulse is still there, and to really form a new powerful religion, you need heretics. You need martyrs and you need heretics. All you need is some stupid cops to provide you with some martyrs. And for heretics, all you need is people that are going to try to stand up for the now obsolete order. Also, the fact that there's a lot more there's a lot more militant people on the atheistic side, and they have a very strong religious impulse. They apparently have a stronger religious impulse than people that still adhere to traditional religions. They're literally worshiping a wrathful and jealous God that is in their living room.
It's funny because I've been writing this up at the suggestion of a friend, and I've written some exactly things that you've just said. That this our religious impulse is just it's like resurrected, after generations of like John Lennon, everybody singing that stupid song together. Didn't work.
My brother-in-law showed me some videos of these guilty ghost people, numbering, each video seemed to have about 100 guilty ghosts, and 5 or 10 bemused, angry, and solemn people of ebony hue, okay, who were actually, some of the people seemed embarrassed, some of the people were crying, okay, some of the people that were being worshipped were humbled by it, some of them were delighted by it, some of it were made cruel and demeaning by it, but there were ghost people kneeling before their new icons, their living biological icons for the new religion, which is racial guilt. And the beautiful thing about this is that once the guilty ghost has abased himself before the ebon god, then he can become a disciple of this new religion and go attack non-guilty ghosts, which are now the heretics. This is just a fantastic religion that I wish I had invented. My webmaster once asked me if I could invent a religion so that we could make some real money. And I was like, look, I'm not L. Ron Hubbard. I'm not that much of a hack. I'm not up to it. But this is the main thing you need for formation of a new religion is a morality vacuum. So just by changing the names of words, consistently changing the names of words, and doing so rapidly, and reversing, taking what was considered good and making it evil, and taking what was evil and making it good, this causes enough of a morality vacuum that you can install your own religion. Gene Wolfe wrote a series of novels on a futuristic religion that would feature technology as oracles, basically televisions installed in religious facilities where people would connect with the gods, who were people that were apparently infotech people who had uploaded their consciousness into a mainframe, and then they were in turn worshipped by the people that their memories ruled over in this generation shift. And the series of novels is titled, there's 4 novels, is titled Litany of the Long Sun. They call it the Long Sun because it's this cylindrical generation ship with this like sun in the middle of this rotating tube where these people lived as they went to the world of the short sun, which is going to be the new place that humanity was going to see. So it was a story about a generation ship with a technologically based religion, and we have it. It's already here. The man just died, 6 months ago, 5 months ago. It's already here.
The schools is the thing I want to talk about next.
That's the upside. Upside. I'm happy.
I think, yeah. Let me get a drink. I'll be right back, okay?
Okay.
All right. Schools have been closed since March in most places,
which has resulted in an extreme reduction in violent street crime by teenagers in Baltimore County and Baltimore City against ordinary homeowners and renters.
Why is that? Just because they're not concentrated in their groups?
Well, what happens in places like Baltimore City and Baltimore County, kids don't go to school. The weaponized children who are now youths in junior high school and high school, they do not go to school in their own neighborhoods. They get bused into other neighborhoods. And then 1,000 of these kids will get released at one time. Some of the kids might live in the neighborhood, but the children going to schools very rarely resemble the people that actually live in those neighborhoods. And it's busing. It's still busing, which was started in the 1970s. And it was a way to displace homeowners through violent crime and move real estate and flip real estate. Even in cases when, minority of students will actually come from the neighborhood, they will tend to act as scouts for the kids from outside of the neighborhood who then conduct the crimes and in turn act as scouts for their uncles and cousins who will do nighttime operations in the area. So on the way home from school, even if they don't beat anybody up or if they fail to rob me again because they chickened out at the last moment, as I'm sliding my knife into my hand, or as I'm chucking my cane up onto my shoulder, they can still go home and tell their uncle or their cousin about some automobiles or houses that look likely targets. And one of the things they do is they cut through the yards of corner houses and go into the alleys so they can see the front, side, and back of the yards, and they will intimidate the homeowners. For instance, my landlady has a corner house, and they used to cut through her yard until myself and Mescaline Franklin started hanging out on her front porch and drinking beer. And I actually used wire to enclose her back porch, so it looks like a Mexican cartel was raising fighting cocks on her back porch. And the Ebony homeowner next door to her has even posted no trespassing signs in his yard and has stood out there and asked these young thugs not to walk through his yard. And they look at him and they look at me and they look back at him and they walk through his yard. Okay. And if they walk through his yard when I'm sitting on the front porch, they will actually circle deeper into his yard to stay farther away from me. Okay. As they go through there. So it is an act of aggression as demonstrated by this scenario. And she was really thrilled, that she had these tough looking white guys getting drunk on her front stoop, because, she just felt like she had some, hanging garlic on the door for when the vampires showed up. So kids that do this, they don't commit that many crimes. They brazenly, condition the homeowners to huddle inside. And then they will go home and they'll tell their Uncle Joe, hey, Uncle Joe, there's this chump that parks his SUV out back. And,
that reminds me of Trayvon Martin, one of the early saints.
Yeah, he was probably a scout.
He was walking across the front lawns, and good old George Zimmerman didn't like that. He didn't like the way that looked. So
I always bayfully encourage thugs to walk through my neighbors' front lawns, and they seem to do so, and don't have any problem with me sitting on the porch wherever I'm temporarily residing.
Well, because once again I'm a mom supremacist and I have elementary age children, that this is what was really on my mind, is what's going on in our lives, and people like me who want to look after their children, educate their children. Some people who were not homeschoolers are now getting plunged into the world of homeschooling and facing this really uncertain future of public schooling. And so it's a very interesting kind of a battle today. Today, Chuck Schumer said that we need to reopen schools. And he's kind of like the first guy on the left who's pushing for it. But, here in California, the teachers' unions are very powerful. And this is like a ready-made strike for them, because if you go on strike, you get a lot of negative feelings from parents. But this time, the teachers didn't have to bear the negative costs, but they just got sent on strike. And now they don't want to come back to work. You have private schools, which are struggling mightily to stay open, but are facing heavy barriers because public schools are trying to consolidate. They're trying to basically set it up so that if we can't open, you can't open, to crush their competition. And homeschoolers like me, the risk that I see is that this is a perfect chance for the government to get in my business more than they ever have before, because the numbers are growing, and they can use that as an excuse that they need to monitor.
Yeah, that will happen. You will be supervised by a public school teacher who will work from home.
Yeah.
That's really the most logical place for this to go. But it at least puts you in between her and your children, or most people. My children were taught to doubt and disbelieve me in school. They were taught to despise me for working with my hands, and told that I was a fool and that I should maybe have my sanity checked for writing for a living. This was once the one boy got to college age. For people like me who didn't have the ability to teach their kids at home, or people who are religious and didn't have the time to do homeschooling, if they both had to work, or the money to send their kid to a religious school, then it's a good thing. For people like you, it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it, but I know that it's like there's more of a spotlight on us than there was before. But
Any censorship so far? Any censorship so far?
Yeah, one thing that's happening here in the Silicon Valley, because people are so dynamically minded and flexible and problem solvers, they came up with the idea of homeschooling pods, where 2 or 3 families would gather their children together and hire a private tutor to come to one of their homes, and sort of like on a Greek model, where you have a learned slave to educate your children.
Okay.
So there's a lot of that happening right now here. Of course, the government is stepping in, trying to put a stop to that, saying, that these employment arrangements are illegal. You can't just hire people hourly or whatever arrangement you're trying to make. But I did get a kick out of this, like, we're going to the, like I'm keeping an Athenian slave in the backyard to teach my kids geometry or whatever.
I think they call them a paleo tribe.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm probably pronouncing it wrong.
Well, so that's the developments in the schooling world. I think it's going to be a miracle if any schools around here are open by January.
Catholic schools in the Baltimore area are going to be open, and people are rushing to get into them, and they just can't get in because basically they're already maxed out anyhow, because the public schools are so dangerous. They're like penitentiaries. Anybody with the means to put their kids in these schools have already done so. I tell you what, I watched a little bit of Fox News, the conservative news channel, and I couldn't believe how stridently these conservatives wanted their children to continue to go back to these places where they are taught to hate everything their parents do and stand for.
Yeah.
So they must. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So
It is.
So it's quite obvious there that conservatism is some kind of trap to render somebody culturally and morally impotent. I guess that's the old church of money. I mean, people used to worship money in this country. Yeah. Now they worship guilt over having money. So I guess it's like going from Yahweh to Jesus. I don't know.
It's still money. It's still money, and it's like, because people are in dual income households, and people are having to, one parent of the couple is facing having to quit their job, and the last thing you want is the labor force to shrink, that you might have to pay people more money, or people's consumption habits to be held steady or even decline.
We live in a consumptive society.
Yeah.
I think that's it. That they used to, that was a term they used to use for
tuberculosis.
Respiratory diseases, right?
Tuberculosis.
Right, and that's what our society is based on, the economic analog of that disease. So, go figure that we're having a bump in the road.
It's something, it's very interesting. There's a lot of factions. It's not strictly a left or right thing. I think it's landed on the right because that's where, like, the virus denialism is supposed to be. That's supposed to be a right-wing thing, I guess. I don't know. It's really weird. Like, even the thing with the drug, it turns in, it has to be politicized. Like, there's this drug, and Trump early on was saying that it's a good drug, and that's like just poisoned the well. Now nobody can evaluate this drug on any basis other than political. And so I think the school thing dropped into that. Maybe that's part of why, but certainly the big part of it is that it's just economics above all. And you have to keep this machine going. I'm going to do more mom talk because the other thing I wanted to talk about is that I'm not particularly afraid of this virus. I think there is a real communicable disease, but as it turns out, it's just not very serious in my opinion. Okay, I don't know if that's going to piss anybody off, but my point is that I know personally a lot of young mothers who are really suffering because they're afraid for their children and they're isolated. And my kids are kind of medium-sized now. They're not so small anymore, and I know it would have been really hard to go through this when they were small. So I don't know if you're listening and you know any young moms, do whatever you can to support them and go visit them or whatever they're comfortable with.
But we're going to end up with a type of anxiety orphan out of this. And I think it's going to be good for the system because these kids are going to need to be drugged at a higher rate than normal, earlier than normal, for whatever reasons that the government sees fit. So it'll make more vulnerable minds when a child grows up. It's going to be like growing up as part of a stream of refugees coming out of a war-torn country. Only there's going to be the additional terror of the monster hovering outside of the place that you're always afraid to leave.
The thing is that I am a homeschooler. I support it. If it's something that you want to do, I want to help you in any way that I can. But I also know that it's not like every day is a picnic. It's really hard work. It takes up a lot of time, a lot of your time and a lot of your energy. And there's different kind of challenge to making your own kid do something versus, when a teacher is trying to make them do something. And, not all kids are, and not all parents are like natural learners and readers. And, so this may return some kind of natural hierarchy to like literacy and other types of academic achievement, so some kids are going to fall behind. Some parents are going to really suffer. So, it's not a one size fits all solution by any means, and parents need to help each other, like families need to help each other. If you know people who need help, you should help them, because it's not easy. Homeschooling isn't easy.
I was staying with Oliver when he was filming Hobo History. He homeschools his children. Now, since he had to give them supplementary schooling before because the private school he sent them to, in his opinion, did a pretty shoddy job, and he wasn't about to send them to the public schools because he knows they do a shoddy job. And they're doing a lot better just with him than they were with him supplementing the teaching they were getting at the private school. He has a boy and a girl. And their reading levels are a lot higher than normal. And what he does is he does his business that doesn't require him to talk while they read out loud in the other room. They have to read loud enough. They take turns reading. One does their math while the other one reads out loud so that he can listen to them read. And then he reads to them together in the evening. They spend an hour reading C.S. Lewis in the evening. When I was there, it was Prince Caspian.
Oh, I like Prince Caspian.
So but he's had to change the way he does business because, he can't get anybody to watch his kids half the time. And so he's changed the types of work that he can do with his kids tagging along. So he does a lot more outside work, security installation, which that business is going up. So, so it can work, I guess.
Yeah, it just requires flexibility. And I mean, everybody, there's like a group of people on the right, especially who are like waiting for the collapse, like everything's going to crash down and we're going to rebuild. And this is what school is doing. The whole schooling system is crashing right now. This is what it looks like. And it doesn't, you don't just automatically start building something better. You have to piece it together for yourself and slowly for your community. So, and some people are not going to be rebuilding it. I mean, I know that in California, there are a lot of people who do not speak English, who are Spanish speakers, who are not particularly literate in Spanish, and who are not going to be able to impart English literacy to their children. I've
long thought that the purpose for our public schools was just societal indoctrination and brainwashing of the young people.
Yeah.
So I have two thoughts for why the school system might be intentionally being crashed. One is that they have already done their job. Okay, they've actually managed to erase Christian religious faith, and literally erase it. It's basically gone. Christianity is going to have to go underground in large measure. They're the only people getting arrested for having worship services. So education has successfully been used to target Christianity. and in favor of, some other type of religion. The other thing is the sophistication of the media, the fact that people have been programmed through cartoons, dramas, commercials, and all this stuff to be so susceptible to the media that a governor can just say something without enforcing any of it, and 95% of people will abide by it. Okay, so that's the ability to frame reality very simply and concisely. I think not only has education done its job in destroying what was left of Western civilization on this continent, but it's now possibly obsolete. It's just going to be a lot easier to get people to watch TV, particularly if you keep them locked up inside.
Yeah, and with the way that the internet is and the smartphones, you don't have to have a high level of literacy to work a smartphone and to receive the programming and the consumption advice that you need.
And you think about it. Most people think that all serial killers are people of my demographic,
Yeah.
when in fact serial killers are very evenly spread, okay, across different demographics. And that's solely because of TV dramas. The whole, this whole idea of the Chuck Norris rule is now being implemented. You now have some police departments where they're telling the cops to shoot people in the legs. I looked at still photography of this police officer that was carved up horrificly. The guy with the knife did fantastic work. After the cop had shot him like 5 times in the legs, the guy still got to him with the knife and carved him up. That actually comes from these really bad Chuck Norris karate TV shows.
Like shoot it out of his hand, like bing,
Right. The whole thing, shooting guns out of hands, is like, that's like pure TV. It's almost impossible to train a lot of people in practical combatives because they have watched TV. Yeah, right. So I really think that the programming through my mother was in tears relating to me how horrific and vicious men like me used to be, because she saw a TV drama of an escaped slave woman, and we all know that slaves were only ever of one race, and they were only ever held by people of one race. And she was literally in tears because she had spent her whole life watching like TV dramas and soap operas and commercials, and I've observed the way these things work. And even when you resist them, even when you resist it and you argue in your mind against the content that you're being exposed to, you will compromise in your mind, because you're having an argument, and that usually results in some kind of compromise. So even when you resist the media, it's affecting your thought process.
Yeah.
And so I would really suggest that most people, cut their media consumption by like 90%, especially from smartphones. I've seen it completely addle the brains of men that I coach and mentor, to get them to the point where they're incapable of keeping their cool, and they won't even realize they're saying what they're thinking. Okay. So I really encourage the abandonment of media, and even media that you agree with. People think that they can continue to like read news stories because they're reading news that's been filtered through some smart ass bald guy that used to be a bar bouncer and is really funny and isn't as cooked as most people on the right. But still, even though it's being filtered through his funny mind, it's still affecting you and it's still pissing you off when you got better things to worry about than what's going on in some other city. I mean, the only city in America that you're part of is the city that you're living in.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter what's going on in other American cities where you're concerned. You've already been ostracized by the system if you're somebody that believes in right and wrong. And you believe in there's something greater than guilt, right? Yeah. So I think that, I'd really encourage people to just kill media consumption as much as possible.
Yeah.
It's the reason why, I think I write more books than like every other American author combined. It's because they're all mentally masturbating to their smartphone. And, they might be smarter than me. They might have typing skills, but I have none. But I'm not sucking at the teat of the goddess here and imbibing all this guilt-laden media. So I really suggest it as an antidote to what else.
Yeah, I think so. People should take a break as much as they can.
Turn away from the shining God.
I mean, did you see there was a huge explosion in Beirut? I mean, I have no idea. I just have no idea what happened. There's no way I can know. I have no knowledge of explosives. I have no knowledge of video analysis. It's just beyond my ability to have any influence in my life, But people come out of the woodwork instantly to to analyze the video and to tell you what it's supposed to be and stuff. It's like I can't do it.
I wasn't interested in it, but the guy I was having an in-depth conversation with at the table insisted that I be interested in it, and all he accomplished was losing his train of thought. And we failed to continue a pretty interesting conversation we had while, we looked at a video of something blowing up. It's part of the way that the system locks you into your little cradle, your crib, and treats you like a toddler. Mm-hmm. That's why the people who tend to act more like toddlers than any other group of people have been elevated to angelic status. Because that's what the system wants. The system wants 4-year-old mentality.
Yeah, it's true.
It's easier to manage. I don't think from a selfish perspective, I don't think it's a bad thing. People that are sharp, I think, are going to be able to do better. And people who are dull are going to do worse. And I think that's good. It kind of reignites the Darwinist in me.
Yeah, I mean, I do consume media. I follow Twitter. I follow stuff like this whole school situation because it affects me directly, and I need to be able to plan my life for my children. Like, we belong to this co-op, and it's really interesting, going through this with all these other families and seeing where people land. Basically, there's 2 camps. Like the camp that is really worried about the virus and is happy to do distance learning for as long as possible. And the other camp, which is that we need to be together as much as possible. We like each other. We like spending time together. That's the whole point of a co-op, is to have families to have fellowship with instead of just being by ourselves, especially when everything else has been removed. I can't even take my kids to the playground. Earlier this summer, I was taking my kids to the beach and literally I was dodging police on the beach. Okay, the police.
That was a role reversal for us.
That was what?
That was a role reversal for you and I.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't quite unplug myself completely.
Well, I'm not suggesting that. I mean, I would still use the internet to do your research. And for instance, if I was in the coaching business and that's how I was making a living, I'd be following what was going on in that online. Okay. But if you align yourself with a media outlet, which is what people do.
Yeah. One
thing, it will end up putting you in a group. It'll actually put you into a doctrinal niche.
Yeah.
And now most people everybody has their one channel that they look at. They don't look at anything else.
Oh,
so it's actually rendered people incapable of having discussions about the same subject because they're both receiving a different slant on it.
Mm.
And the other thing is any given news media outlet. For instance, I have a friend that follows the Daily Storm, and month by month, he thinks more and more like Andrew Anglin,
sure.
who, to me, is like the funniest and most intelligent guy on the
it's
whole
very
way.
persuasive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that you just become a mini-me of whoever you're listening to for the most part.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the reason for that is not because you're weak-minded. The reason for that is that this guy or the staff, this editorial staff, whatever, they have pre-sorted what stories you're going to look at.
Yeah.
There are 1,000 stories every day, and you're reading the 7 that Andrew has time to type up and make jokes about.
Yeah.
So just what you're exposed to, forget his opinion and your opinion. You might be able to keep that separate. Probably not, but you might be able to. But the point is he's deciding what your worldview is, whether you agree with him or not.
Yeah.
Okay. And this happens with every media outlet. And then if you try to follow like opposite media outlets, then you're going to burn up a huge amount of time, and you'll find out that there's a large segment of the media that agrees with each other. Like Fox and CNN always agree on the fact that we have to go to war.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're supposedly diametrically opposed to each other, yet they always agree on that. So, come on, that tells you that this is just a good cop, bad cop media setup. And then there's a sideshow media setup for the weirdos like me. So you should just use the internet as an archive and not go to any news site. You should just go to archive material. And then when you walk by a TV or you walk by somebody looking at a website and you look at that page or you look at that, 60-second, TV spot, you'll immediately be able to see right through it if you've been accessing stuff directly yourself and getting your own sources because you're proactively using your mind. And also, most of these younger people get their media material from a smartphone, and that requires you to assume the position of supplication, as if you were kowtowing to the King of Thailand or the King of Kings, Cyrus the Great. You might as well be getting on your knees and kissing the sneakers of the ebon god. This is what you're doing. It's a passive thing. So if you do consume any media, you should do it like on a laptop or something, so that you're at least more upright and you don't have your hand in this attitude of submission. You actually have your hands out in a searching manner. I mean, that whole the submission posture is even shared by the great apes.
It's the head
the submission posture.
Yeah.
And this is how you use a smartphone.
Yeah, it's true.
I won't get one. People are really upset that I won't get a smartphone. Okay, I'm sorry. Not doing it. Just not going to kneel. Not going to get a smartphone. Not going to get hanged. It's just like, only 3 things I'm not going to do.
I don't blame you. I didn't have one until, this is going to be weird, but I actually had a BlackBerry at work. And, I didn't get one until, 2010, maybe. And before that, I had a flip phone. And then when I left that job, I went back to the flip phone, and I didn't have a smartphone until 2012 or 2013.
I was dating in 2004. I was dating a lawyer who had a BlackBerry, and she told me she was going to get me one. I was like, what? Yeah, and she made a joke. Nice. She said, she said, I can use it to track you. Okay, so, and I'm really interested in the conversations you have with your other girlfriends.
The BlackBerries were nice because they had a real keyboard. I liked it. I liked the BlackBerry. It was nice. It
looked like to me, I remember seeing it. It looked like a cross between a calculator and some kind of transistor radio that was trying to be a computer. I thought it was pretty cute.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. And I think every so often somebody tries to make a smartphone with a keyboard, but I don't know, it doesn't work. But that's my background. I didn't have one until pretty late. And I didn't even have a flip phone until pretty late compared to my peers.
Cool. Well, I have been acting like a pretty stupid ape since I accidentally figured out how to take a picture with my flip phone back in January. I've taken like 1,000 pictures on, that brought out the simian toddler in me. So I used some of them for covers. I mean, I know they probably look like they were taken with a really bad camera a long time ago.
Even the flip phones do have a decent camera, but it's the screen. You can't see what you're taking a picture of. I think is probably part of the problem.
Well, I know that I'm susceptible to technological hypnotism, just like any other ape. So I try to avoid it for that reason.
Yeah,
I experienced it before. I recall being obsessed with being online and not getting a lot of work done.
It's true. It's the double-edged sword. You can spend a lot of time and get yourself riled up. I mean, some people enjoy it. I think that some people really do enjoy it. Like my mom, she likes to watch Hannity, and I don't know who else what she watches, or she goes online and finds people, and it's like she likes that feeling of being upset, but I don't like it. It tires me out. I can't really do it.
It's a fascinating situation, and I don't like being upset.
I don't either.
It reduces my ability to upset other people. So
I am upset about the establishment of a new religion. I think, like, for, I think that's something worth.
We are in year one of our Lord Floyd.
So something like that is to me a valid use of my time and being online and stuff.
Now, the Catholic churches were the ones that were, so far, I know of 4 Catholic churches that were defaced and vandalized. I think Mother Mary was beheaded in one of them. It makes sense that Catholicism is being targeted first because there's a lot of symbology. They have more symbology than the other extant faiths. They tend to have a weaker identity. The Catholic Church in the U.S. is essentially acting as an NGO for refugee resettlement right now. The other thing is that other Christians don't even consider Catholics Christians to a large degree. So it's a way for the new faith to start picking people out, so that the cobbler won't do anything when the hat maker gets dragged away, and the carpenter won't do anything when the cobbler gets dragged away, and then eventually it'll just be the one guy getting dragged away. So I definitely think that's a divide and conquer thing there. I'm assuming that the last ones left standing here are going to be the Mormons.
The deep state Mormons.
Yeah, I think they'll be. I think the Mormons will be the last one. The last one's actually still practicing openly. But I'd really suggest to my Christian friends that they go back to the catacombs.
Well, I wrote it on Twitter. I wrote, "This is a Fed post, but this is ridiculous. You have to go back to church." The Supreme Court ruled that Nevada was justified in closing churches while at the same time leaving casinos open. It's just embarrassing. I mean, it's like, why are we even pretending to have a constitution, a Supreme Court? This whole thing is just such a sham.
Well, I think the Constitution is a sham. I thought the Articles of Confederation and Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights were also a sham. And the Magna Carta was a sham. That's just my opinion. And I think that was the institution of a new religion. I think it was deistic, Masonic. And I'm not sure of the details, but the way religious symbolism was used, and particularly Jefferson's deep involvement with it and his editorializing he did with the New Testament to break it down into a secular document, and the fact that it was obviously the hostile takeover of resource extraction locations to develop manufacturing stuff on site. by the overseers. I really think that was the institution of the worship of plenty, not just money, okay, but the worship of economy and abundance as an actual earthly religion. And it obviously came pretty seamlessly out of Protestant Christianity. And it's not a surprise to me that now that religion of capitalism is being superseded by this guilt base, which is that's very Catholic there, but this guilt based socialism. So we go from the worship of avarice to the worship of guilt. So we now have this church of the act of contrition for real and imagined crimes committed by other people in another age. So
it doesn't have to make sense, obviously, because it doesn't make sense. There's the facts show that.
That's the acid test for religion.
Right.
Is that it's irrational.
But people have that yearning. And it's interesting because there's it's a materialist religion. I'm trying to write something up about this that makes sense. But it's like, what you pointed out is that we worship our own bodies and our own comfort in America. Besides worshiping money and commerce, it's like this fear of death and fear of illness and fear of discomfort. No, you've called it anti-heroic because, a hero sacrifices his body by definition. He goes into the battle not to survive it.
One manner in which I think it's collectively self-worshiping is, and this is really where our science-based atheism comes in, which grew directly out of the Age of Enlightenment, which grew out of the Reformation, and it negated the Renaissance. The Renaissance was a way to bring culture and physicality back together again. The old idea of the Renaissance man that was extinguished with the Enlightenment and then the affectation of all these effeminate things. The founders of modern Western culture, these faggots all powdered their noses and wore powdered wigs. Okay. I mean, this was a very effeminate culture. When you look at the signing of the treaty at the end of Pontiac's Rebellion, and you look at these mixed race Indians, and a lot of them weren't even mixed race, they were straight up Caucasians, in this, open, shed, across from the men who penned and signed it on the English side. They looked racially very similar, but the very effeminate artist depicted the Englishmen as extremely effeminate, and the people that they had defeated as hyper masculine. These guys look like the bad guys in the Road Warrior. All right. Okay. So this makes a lot of sense. We end up worshiping the human mind, and the best way to depict atheism as a religion, and as a religion, particularly in its Western form, is the fact that atheists, and Stefan Molyneux did 2 audiobooks on this, and he probably did the best attacks that I've listened to or read on religion as something that's evil. And I don't believe that religion is something evil, but he's specifically going after Christianity as the model for world religions and why religions deserve to disappear. And he is also at the same time explaining why atheism is a religion, and he doesn't know. So he and other atheists point out that religion is irrational because you believe in something that you cannot prove. Religion is faith in something that you cannot prove. But atheism is the denial of something that you cannot disprove. Mm. So the atheistic mind says, if I cannot prove it, if I cannot frame it in my mind and rationalize it, it cannot exist. That is the dream of a God right there. That's what that is. That is man trying to frame himself as God. Mm-hmm. That's what atheism is. So we've come to the logical conclusion of a couple hundred years of atheism. Jason Reza-Georgiani does an excellent example of describing the religious fanaticism of atheism during the French Revolution, and even why they gave up on it and went back to a hollow Catholicism, because they found that this rabid atheism actually ate the practitioners at such a high rate that they were losing cohesion. And then somebody like Napoleon comes along and reintroduces a type of military tradition. So atheism is itself a religion. What the BLM movement adds to it is it gives you the guilt of the Catholicism.
Yeah,
and that's very important. It gives you this like Catholic level of guilt that you can put into your atheism.
Big time.
And it gives you sacrifice.
It gives you sacrifice. Yeah, that's on my list.
So it gets away from because American Christianity, American Christianity has been bereft largely of ritual. Protestant American Christianity lacks a lot of ritual that Catholicism and the Orthodox Church had, and it depended and still largely depends on a prosperity gospel. Prosperity is quickly going away. We pretty much burned through the 70 million person bone pile of World War II, and now things are starting to level out, and that prosperity is going away too. So you need to get back to something that's got more sacrifice by somebody else rather than you, and more guilt.
Yeah, it has guilt. It builds group cohesion. I mean, these people are going and getting together every night.
The mask is a very cultic aspect of this whole thing. The mask is essentially medically useless. I had an interesting conversation with my doctor about this, and David's not. He said, "Look, I built my own house, so I used surgical masks when I was sanding drywall." And he said, I'm inhaling particles that are 10 microns, which is like a 10 micron dust particle compared to a virus. It's like comparing the Titanic, to a canoe. Yeah. So he's like, yeah, it helps. If 5 of us are leaning down over you while we're cutting open your body, it helps keep all of our germs from draining into you.
All right.
Okay. He said, but it doesn't do what people think it does.
I mean, atheism is really oppressive because in an anti-religious way, like C.S. Lewis, you mentioned earlier, those Narnia books are wonderful because he was a devout Catholic and he wrote those books to awaken and cultivate the imagination and the mystery, and we have these neighbors, our next door neighbors are Muslims, but they're really like kind of post-Muslim American materialists in a lot of ways. And the boys, they do like this science stuff, The dad just tells them all about outer space and stars and
get them a copy of Gaddafi's science fiction.
I've never heard of that. I didn't know Gaddafi wrote. But I mean, it's very tiresome because I actually know some physics, and I'm versed in basic science, and these kids are so like science oriented that they sit there and give lectures that I have to go and correct because they're actually wrong, about stuff, and I can't really let it slide. But it's so boring and pedantic, and I feel bad for them. Meanwhile, my kids have listened to The Hobbit dozens of times and all the Narnia books, and Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales, and other books, old and less old, children's books, but they're fantasy books. I don't like to bring up kids with this reverence for science that, to me, it's inappropriate. It's like...
What's the foundation of the false god?
Yeah.
Another thing that you might be able to use. The Aztecs, I believe it was every 51 years. They believed that if there weren't enough sacrifices made to the gods, that the sun would not be relit, something like that. The sun wouldn't come up again. It would be the end. There was a vast amount of fear and terror built into that religion. It was actually a very effective religion for the development of the state empire. And the God of the Old Testament was a wrathful and jealous God. And particularly if you read the book of Job, and if you read the works of Increase and Cotton Mather from Plantation America, from the foundation era of this country in the 1600s, Satan was a very important aspect to the dualism of Christianity. The idea that Satan is actually, he might think he's against God, but he's working for God by testing man. And
that's present in Catholicism as well, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is really, I really recommend reading the book of Job. I hadn't read it since I was in my early 30s, and it was a real eye-opener after reading all the Plantation America rants about the Indians being the children of the devil, and the New Englanders getting what they deserved when the Indians rose up against them. And this is from the point of view of the pastors of the New Englanders who were assaulted by the Indians.
Right.
And so that makes a lot more sense after you read the book of Job. So this idea that you have to have a devil has been lost by a lot of mainstream Christian denominations in this country. And these people, their denominations have lost potency and they've lost membership. And the idea that God is all about prosperity and helping you out, that's also in a lot of mainstream denominations. And you have people that want to hold on to their flocks, trying to accentuate the positive in God's relationship with man. You're losing the terror that really puts the fervor in religious fanaticism. So with the whole mythology of the Caucasian serial killer and of pale privilege and of the martyrdom of an entire race of people on the altar of another race's privilege, you start to get back to some really fundamental building blocks necessary for high levels of fanaticism. So I think this is definitely looking at a second Reformation here. And the Christianity hasn't been scrubbed from it. It's been highly corrupted and hijacked tragically, but there's still recognizable Christian aspects to the new religion. It's rising before our eyes. It's rising like a golem of a god that's being collectively built by us all, with its different beatific and horrific aspects to it. So it's pretty exciting.
I have seen BLM slogans that say that white people should be grateful that we just want justice and we don't want revenge. Talk about a terrorizing slogan.
Well, I hope they get their revenge too. That's the only thing that's going to wake most of these guilty ghosts up and these slaves to sloth that populate this country. Until everybody's had a neighbor that's been dragged out of their house by one of these very pale and privileged BLM mobs. Until that's happened, I don't think there's any chance that enough people are going to wake up that before we're essentially we're already in a Philip K. Dick novel, but before we're in Gene Wolfe's generation shit. Okay. I think this is good because there's a chance. This wasn't, Uncle Ted wrote about this, that the system will develop its own hunger and instinct, and it will push against resistance until it breaks it, and then it will keep pushing harder because it's essentially a thing that has built up momentum.
Yeah.
And it's just going to keep going harder until it crashes.
What it knows how to do. Yeah.
Right. It's a cancer.
Yeah.
This is a macroparasitic cancer, the system that we live under and which eats us. physically and spiritually. So it has gone into overdrive, I think, because a weird-haired orange meat puppet that tried to cut its puppet strings got caught in its throat, and it's trying to regurgitate him and throw him up, and doesn't know how to digest him and pass him through. I think that's why this is actually happening earlier than it would have naturally happened. That,
and with more violence.
Right, but it's earlier, and the earlier it happens, the better, because the more of a chance people have to wake up before they're too old to do anything, because the most of the people that have a chance of understanding that there's something wrong, they're older than 30.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to wait till they're 60.
Yeah.
Until the only people that can see what's going on are too old to do anything to save somebody around them from the blooming insanity that's going to engulf them. And I'm not talking about preserving an old political form or an old religion or anything. I'm just talking about preserving the sanity and perspective of individuals. Just enough people to be able to do that, so that there'll be so that there'll at least be a seed of knowledge that, there was once a world in which everybody was not terrified and kneeling and obeying all the time. That's all. That's all I'm talking about. There's a better chance that that idea can be like the idea of the hero, which died. The idea of the hero has been largely dead in mainstream Western culture for a couple hundred years. And it had been intentionally purged from the culture. And, but that stayed alive. For the idea of some type of spiritual autonomy, for that to stay alive in an age of witch finding, in which the witch is always going to be sought out by the mob, by the hysterical mob, that has a better chance of that idea of a pre-witch finder, autonomous mind. That idea of that, the character in 1984 that does not break, the idea that there could be somebody that doesn't break, for that to survive, we're in a better position now when you have people who are still vigorous enough to try to help bring a new person along that hasn't been indoctrinated yet. Because the people between puberty and 40, almost all of them are just completely brainwashed. They're done. They will never have any capacity to see reality. The war on reality has been won. And I read recently an old article by Greg Johnson, who's a nice guy who paid me for a couple of articles and who totally rejected the idea of plantation America as not conducive to building a large-scale racial identity political movement in this country. Good luck with that. He after denying to me that the truth was worth anything because it wouldn't help build a large-scale political movement. Right. He wrote an article on rules for writers. It was like a 2-part article. It was a pretty good article, except for his insistence that a writer could never successfully complete anything with noisy distractions around. When I've written books on like Baltimore City busts, okay, and I wrote my first couple books when I was learning how to do it in the living room while my wife was watching stupid game shows, okay, and trying to distract me by throwing stuff at me. So, aside from that, he points out that our job as people who are trying to enlighten other minds and preserve Western culture, which he has really endangered by pursuing unachievable political solutions because he doesn't understand how power works. In the end, his last paragraph, I was laughing out loud. I was reading an old print copy that was given to me by a friend of mine who was asking me for writing advice, and he wanted to know what I thought about Craig's writing advice. I said, well, I don't think he knew it, but in this book, in this like, not a book, it was a 3,600 word essay in 2 parts. In this essay, 6 years ago, he proclaimed the doom of what he was trying to achieve when he declared at the end of it that the lie has no powerful and that the truth is all powerful and all you have to do is keep speaking the truth and the lie will vanish like mist. No. The lie exists because it is a thing of power. It is a mechanism of power that has been sculpted
by geniuses across many ages to conceal the truth from idiots. Okay. It was a hamburger that was designed by the greatest chef in the world to feed the hunger of the biggest obese idiot glutton in the world. Okay. That's what kind of creation it is. If we can use, a McDonald's metaphor, since they're doing so good in this shamdemic environment, that's what the lie is powerful. The lie is hugely powerful. The father of lies, Satan, the devil, he resides in the earthly realm because he can impose God's will on man and teach man through the hard road of sin. This atheistic bone smoker who used to make fun of Southern nationalist Christians who would write him checks for thousands of dollars. Him and Richard Spencer used to laugh at these Christians who, some of them are soldiers, some of them are royal officers, or upstanding guys. They financed this whole movement that was run by these weird cultural fetishists. Okay. The atheists that ran the movement, Craig and Spencer, would laugh at the Christians who funded it. Okay. And then still say that the truth is more powerful than the lie. When, they're children of the lie and they're being financed, okay, by the sons of the truth and making fun of them at the same time. And they're running the show. Okay. And they can't even see what they're doing. So religion's been a huge part of this because man tries to reform his spirit into a faithful construct so that he can share it with his fellows, despite all the cruelties of time and fate. I think this is for the better, because if this man had not been accidentally elected, and the machine hadn't choked on him and had to sped up and rev its engine to try to grind him up in his gears, then nobody would have woke up. I mean, there would have been a couple weirdo science fiction writers like myself. Yeah. And that's it. So this is, I think it's a good thing.
I think there is a chance that he'll win again, like a pretty good chance.
Oh, it's going to be hell if he does.
I know.
If he does, it's going to be a complete nightmare, which would be great. And if he doesn't win, I mean, I would really also find it pretty thrilling to live in a world in which Joe Biden, okay, takes 23andMe samples and decides what race you are.
Yeah.
And then puts you on the guilty ghost sweepstakes.
There is a headline, speaking of consuming media that just doesn't do me any good, but there's a headline that Federal Reserve, the Congress proposed some legislation to anoint the Federal Reserve to seek to add racial justice to its job description. Like right now, the Federal Reserve has two jobs. One is to try to maintain full employment in the economy, and the other one is to maintain the value of the currency with some, minor inflation. And so they would add
because it's an NGO. People think it's a government agency, but it's an NGO.
Yeah, it's its own thing. So they would add this to its job description, racial justice. And I don't know how they would manage to do that, but if they find a way to punish white people through the Federal Reserve, I think that I predict you'll see complete dissolution of the white race, and you're going to have people parsing their race. They'll just claim any fraction that they can of anything.
Well, the white race doesn't exist anyhow. It was made up by non-European people as an insult.
Yeah, I mean, it was, but that was a long time ago. And there is a white American identity that has arisen, to meet that invented name. It's there.
And what that identity was based on was two things. Okay, it was based on economic success, which was based on hitherto unexploited natural resources, okay, that did not exist in this quantity anywhere else in the world, and it was based on the one thing that was assigned to the white man in the founding documents. The only thing he was assigned was the honor to die for the Republic. That was the destination of the white man. The white man was the guy that was going to die for this machine, for this economic machine. That was his goal. Now, first, you had a continent that you could give to him in lots for his service and wiping out and driving the indigenes to extinction. You could do that. You could reward him, because it is very unusual for the majority of any nation in any time period to hold privilege. It is usually the job of the majority to hold inferior status, while the minority, the racial minority, holds privilege, as it was in England with the Normans and other races before them. Then, after, as soon as the West was won, the Spanish-American War was started under a false flag so that America could go on the imperial road. And then there was a world to conquer. There was a world for the white man to conquer in the name of capitalism and exploitation, which I don't think was a good thing. A lot of people thought it was a good thing. I know guys who think it's a good thing, and they believe in America because it's based on effective economic exploitation and it raises the standard of living here. Well, in the information age, this is the post-industrial age, you no longer need tens of thousands of riflemen from the Appalachians and the Rocky Mountains in the Deep South to go conquer places. All you need is a few hundred special ops guys, which will always be there because you always have these genetic studs out there, and your drones and your intelligence people and your Air Force and your Navy. This is all you need to continue to police the world. So it is time to have a normal society in which the majority is oppressed at the hands of the minority. And the minority will typically use an alien minority to oppress the majority that is closely related to the elite minority. This is normally how nations function. And we're talking about across different ages. Agrarian, industrial, mercantile. This is normally how they function. So the United States is just going to go back to a normal level of national function. And it might break up into different parts. So who knows? If it's done, it'll probably have more to do with governors' ambition than anything. But
maybe if Trump wins, that will accelerate a governor.
That would probably accelerate balkanization, and you'll have states want to break up and everything. But this is normal. It is normal for the racial majority to be oppressed. That is normal. Okay, so we are going to, now that, and we have global cooling is in force, okay, and this is going to be something else that's going to negatively affect economic growth. Not to mention the fact that it was unsustainable levels of economic growth on a finite planet anyhow, and we've decided not to go out into space in a meaningful way. So things need to return to a normal social contract where you have the plow, the book, and the sword. The book commands the sword to oppress the plow. And most of the people are operating the plow. Well, now the plow is just consumption. It's so easy to make shit that all you need is people to eat it so that you can make profit off of it. And I believe that our masters want an extreme reduction in the human population. So I actually think Agenda 21 is a real thing, and that by depressing the morale of the majority and of the most industrious people, and the fact that we have global cooling happening, I think that the thought behind the scenes is we want to stop population growth amongst the people that could potentially threaten our world, which is the people like us.
Yeah.
So, and then they can always just reach down. They could find somebody like my son who was a promising mind, and they could snatch him away from me and make him one of their kind. And then they could replenish themselves like that.
They have very effective means to do that. I mean, one of the most high-profile women since the last election is Kellyanne Conway. She works for Trump, and she has a daughter who's on social media who, has publicly disowned her parents, and she's a very beautiful young woman. I don't know how old she is, college age, I think. But, she has this public humiliation of her mother and repudiation of everything her mother believes in. And at the same time, all conservatives are stomping their feet that the schools should open. You have this perfect example. Mom works for Trump. Her mom has one of the most high-profile careers ever for a woman in politics.
Is a good-looking blonde chick. It's I'm sorry. I saw a press conference, and his press secretary is finally a press secretary that I enjoy watching.
It's not.
That's
that
not
lady.
the chick we're talking about.
No, okay. She's older. She's very slim, blonde lady, but she's definitely older. She's old. She's got an old face.
I talked to a police officer.
Yeah.
In New York City, and he told me about the mayor's daughter being caught out riding. Well, this is a detail he told me. He said mayors and governors have their own, and I knew this. They have their own mini secret services that are drawn from the local police forces or from the state police. Yeah. So when she was doing her rioting, she was being protected by NYC, by New York City police officers.
In her mugshot, she looks really bad. She's really high on drugs and just looks like Kellyanne Conway's daughter looks really beautiful, but just, completely opposed to everything her mother does. But whereas Bill de Blasio's daughter is doing, the good work that her father supports.
I'm enjoying the rise of the golem, so it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
It's actually as a science fiction writer, it's going to be hard trying not to get dated at this point. Reality
it's happening so fast.
Right.
I'm gonna call it right there for an episode.
Right.
Thank you, James.
Right. Thank you.
Getting late and we've got shit to do in outer space. Mothers can wait. We will take the ones worth saving. Pack your bags, we are vacating now. Forever, forever. There's a cosmic radio in my head, and it's reading news articles, and the correspondent sadly said the universe is flat. He also mentioned that gravity is caused by our cavities and our reflection of time's not a receding headline, it's all mass produced in the back of our minds. There's some things that we will never know, and I don't ever want to know. And so it goes. Let's fuck it up. the hills out yonder, through the traffic and the people. Boy, it really makes me wonder how we